Our land use committee meeting. Oops, sorry. Start that over again. All right. Okay. Welcome everyone to our land use committee meeting of Monday, September 24th, 2018. I'm Katie Tang, chair of this committee. To my right is Vice Chair Supervisor Jane Kim, and to my left is Supervisor Asha Safai. Our clerk is Erica Major, and from SFGov TV, we'd like to thank Charles Krimenak and Jim Smith. Madam Clerk, are there any announcements?
Yes, please make sure to silence all cell phones and electronic devices. Completed speaker cards and copies of any documents to be included as part of a file should be submitted to the clerk. Items acted upon today will appear on the October 2nd Board of Supervisors agenda unless otherwise stated.
Thank you. Can you please call items 1 through 7 together, please?
Yes, items number 1 through 7 are various ordinances amending the planning code to designate landmarks for new Pullman Hotel, Local 77 Union Hall, Hotel Utah. Add new appendices to Articles 10 and 11 for Clyde and Crooks Warehouse Historic District, Mint Mission Conservation District, properties in the C3 District, and Kearney, Market, Mason, Sutter Conservation District, and affirming appropriate findings.
Thank you. So due to noticing issues for a couple of items, we are actually going to, I'm going to ask our committee to continue all 7 items to our October 1st Land Use Committee meeting, and we'll do that after public comment. So anyone who would like to speak on items 1 through 7, please come on up. Okay, seeing none, then public comment is closed. So colleagues, if we can continue items 1 through 7 to October 1st. Can we do that? Someone want to make a motion? Okay, all right, so we'll do that without objection. Thank you. Okay, item 8, please.
Item number 8 is an ordinance amending the building code to establish a process for review by the Building Inspection Commission and Code Advisory Committee of legislation proposed by the Board of Supervisors and affirming appropriate findings.
Thank you very much. I'm going to call Bill Strawn up here from Department of Building Inspection, but essentially in a nutshell, this item is really just codifying a process for the Building Inspection Commission and the Code Advisory Committee for any amendments that Board of Supervisors make to the building code. It's been done in practice, but not in code. So, Mr. Strawn.
Thank you very much, Supervisor. We very much appreciate you bringing this forward. We've actually talked about doing this for a bit now. So, as you said, we're just codifying an already existing process and really doing it in cooperation with some advice from our city attorney who recommended that we move forward with this. The Building Inspection Commission did vote unanimously just last week in support of this ordinance, and we very much appreciate it moving forward.
Thank you very much. Any questions or comments from colleagues? Okay, seeing none, then we'll open up item 8 to public comment. Any members of the public who wish to speak on item 8? Okay, seeing none, public comment is closed. So colleagues, if we can get a motion on item 8, please. All right, there's a motion to send forward to the full board with positive recommendation, and we can do that without objection. All right, thank you very much. Madam Clerk, can we please call items 9 through 11 together?
Yes, item number 9 is an ordinance amending the general plan to revise the Bayview Hunters Point area plan, the urban design, commerce and industry, recreation and open space elements to reflect the India Basin mixed-use use project and to adopt appropriate findings. Item number 10 is an ordinance amending the planning code to establish the India Basin Special Use District, amending the planning code by amending the zoning map and making appropriate findings. Item number 11 is an ordinance approving the development agreement between the City and County of San Francisco and India Basin Investment LLC and making appropriate findings.
Oh, okay. And I apologize. I think the captioning on SFGov TV is not reflective of where we're at right now. So again, we are on items 9 through 11.
Thank you,
which should be about India Basin. So I believe that Supervisor Cohen wanted to be here at this hearing. I don't see her yet, but perhaps we do have a number of presenters, so perhaps we can go to them first. We do have Matt Schneider first from Planning, Courtney Pash from Build, and Topier from the Office of Economic and Workforce Development at the minimum, and then we'll maybe get in touch with Supervisor Cohen's office. Okay.
Are they? Re-refer. That's probably what she means.
I apologize, but I think Supervisor Cohen wants to open up this hearing, so we will actually go and call item 12 first then.
Item number 12 is a resolution supporting California State Proposition 10, the Affordable Housing Act, on the November 6, 2018 ballot, and reaffirming the City and County of San Francisco's support for repeal of the Costa-Hawkins Rental Housing Act.
Thank you, and I do know that the sponsors of this item also want to be here, so I apologize. We're just gonna have to wait a few minutes.
Jeez. Oh yeah, I'm just gonna quit.
All right, moving down the line, we're actually going to go to item 13 first because some members are not here. So, item 13, please.
Item number 13 is a hearing on whether We Drive You and Halcon Transportation are in compliance with the Board of Supervisors Resolution number 9615 in their current labor negotiations with Teamsters Local 853 with their corresponding service disruption plan provisions.
Okay, and again, the caption is not reflected properly on SFGov TV, so this is a hearing that is sponsored by Supervisor Safai.
Happening. Okay. Anyone from the Teamsters here? Okay. Through the chair, can we ask the member from the Teamsters 853? We actually have some really good news to report on this item. I'd like to let one of the members, if maybe we can just do public comment on this item,
Okay.
and then I can come back to it.
Sure, we can do item 13. Okay. So we are going to go to public comment for item 13. Welcome.
Thank you. My name is Adolph Felix. I'm the business agent representing Teamsters Local 853, and I actually chaired the negotiations with Loop and We Drive You. And I'm happy to report that we obtained a recommended agreement that was ratified by 97% of our members voting Saturday. So now we have nearly 800 happy bus drivers, and so we just want to thank the committee for whatever assistance you did to render that. And there is no need to proceed any further with this type of hearing.
Thank you very much for sharing that news with us. And is there anyone else who would like to comment on this particular hearing? No, just yourself? Okay. Well, thank you very much. So I think we'll close public comment then on item 13. I'm glad to hear the resolution. Supervisor Safai.
So thank you for coming out today. Yes, we did get a call. Part of our intent of bringing this item forward was to shine light on some of the conversations, ask the parties to essentially get in the room, work harder. We're really happy to hear that over 600 drivers now will have a wage increase of 5% in the first year and 4% in years 2 and 3. This is a wonderful collaboration between the Teamsters and We Drive You and Halcon, and so we're really happy that this resolution has come forward. Congratulations to all the men and women that are driving these trucks and the companies that negotiated for a fair living wage. Congratulations.
Thank you, Supervisor Safai, and everyone who worked to make this a good resolution. So with that,
we get a motion to file the hearing.
Motion to file the hearing, okay, and we'll do that without objection. All right, so, okay, we're going to start 12. One of the co-sponsors is here, Supervisor Fewer, welcome. Again, we're waiting for Supervisor Peskin to get here and apologize for shuffling around, but we're going to call item 12 now.
Yes, hello. Thank you, colleagues. I am a co-sponsor, and Supervisor Aaron Peskin is the main sponsor of this resolution that supports Proposition 10, the Affordable Housing Act. I think that since 1979, when rent control was first passed, is that we've had a rent control policy in place, and that Costa-Hawkins actually at the state level does not allow us to actually even have the discussion about how we may amend our rent control laws or just to re-examine them. And so this is just a resolution in support of the state proposition that is going to be in the November ballot, though it actually give jurisdictions the ability to discuss rent control and how they're affecting their communities, and also to revise it if we so deem. Again, the passing of Proposition 10 doesn't automatically change anything. It just gives the cities and jurisdictions an opportunity to actually design rental measures that actually fit their own communities. So I would like to start off with, hold on one second, please. So I'd like to start off this hearing by hearing some public comment. So let's open this up for public comment, please. Anyone who'd like to speak on this item, which is item 12, around the support for Proposition 10, the Affordable Housing Act, please come up or submit a speaker card. Everyone has 2 minutes to speak.
All right, public comment is now open, so please line on up. Thank you. First speaker may come up to the podium.
Tess Wellborn, D5 Action. I strongly encourage you to pass this on forward to the board. San Francisco is a pro-rent control city, and we need to have all the tools at our disposal to keep our current residents here. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Good afternoon, supervisors. My name is George Wooding. I'm the president of the Coalition for San Francisco Neighborhoods. We support the repeal of Costa-Hawkins Rental Housing Act. Also, a majority of the Board of Supervisors support the repeal of the Costa-Hawkins Act. The resolution supporting the California State Proposition Number 10, the Affordable Housing Act, on November 6, 2018 ballot, and reaffirming the city and county support for repeal of the Costa-Hawkins Rental Housing Act. A cute parliamentarian trick to take this reso from the board and place it in the Land Use Committee will not stop the board from endorsing this resolution before the election. The repeal of Costa-Hawkins will pass on the November 6th election. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Good afternoon, supervisors. Lorraine Petty here, a member of Senior and Disability Action. I'm here to urge the board to support Proposition 10 to repeal Costa-Hawkins. I think for 23 years, Costa-Hawkins has failed tenants, and it's failed the homeowners as well. It has given the green light to rental abuses and excesses. It's taken away our rights to correct them. We know what's going on. Runaway rent increases. Costa-Hawkins has made them legal. Mass displacement, homelessness, evictions, speculation. Costa-Hawkins is the enabler for all of these, and then it denies us the tools to address them. Property owners are guaranteed the right to fair and reasonable profit. Renters deserve fair and reasonable housing. Without Costa-Hawkins tying our hands, we can strike a fair and reasonable balance. We are an innovative, creative, and collaborative city. We can do a whole lot better than the people in Sacramento who don't know us and don't have our interests at heart. The sooner Prop 10 is passed, the sooner we can all get together and work on solutions. Thanks.
Good afternoon, Supervisors. Anastasia Yovanopoulos, a District 8 resident. I'm appealing to you, Supervisors, right now. By supporting a repeal of Costa-Hawkins today, you would indicate that you recognize the fact that you have, along with your fellow supervisors, the ability to work together for the benefit of homeowners and renters for a good outcome. I know some of you are concerned about your constituents who are homeowners. This will not affect them because you have the power to put in place right laws, right legislation to help them, as well as renters who are being displaced in record numbers. I want you to be empowered to create legislation, so repealing Costa-Hawkins would enable you to do so. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Supervisors. Ozzie Round with No Neighborhood Council and San Francisco Land Use Coalition. First of all, my thanks to Supervisor Feuer for sponsoring this measure, and I really appreciate it if the Land Use Committee would also get behind it. This is really important for a city that is populated by tenants at the rate of 65%. We want to do good for the majority. This city is different, especially in terms of the makeup of the tenants versus homeowners. I'm not a tenant, but I do believe that we have to take measures to protect our tenants and make sure that they're going to stay in their homes and not get displaced. Repealing Costa-Hawkins is the right thing to do. We do need to have policies that are going to address the majority of the city of San Francisco. If 35% of the city is made up of homeowners, that doesn't mean that 35% are rental property owners. We have a very small percentage of our residents that are rental property owners. So why should we succumb to their will? And plus, I do not believe that repealing of the Costa-Hawkins is going to actually bring about horrible consequences for such landlords. So again, I'm here to urge you to pass a resolution to support Proposition 10. Thank you.
My name is Peter, and I'm a member of Indivisible San Francisco, and we support Proposition 10, and we want the Board of Supervisors to support Proposition 10 because an overwhelming majority of homeless people in San Francisco were previously housed San Franciscans who lost their home due to rising exorbitant rents. Addressing the lack of affordable housing in San Francisco will go a long way to mitigating the homelessness crisis. And the Yes on 10 campaign is already being outspent 10-1 by its deep-pocketed opponents. An endorsement from the city of San Francisco would be a great help. As has already been mentioned by a previous commenter, the measure in and of itself would not instill rent control. It would give cities and counties like San Francisco the power to enact affordability measures for their constituents should you choose to do so, and I hope you will. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Jordan Davis. I'm just a gadfly and a rotten organizer, but I know it's right. And I want to give a special thank you to Supervisors Kim and Feuer for supporting tenants in the Prop 10 resolution, and a what up bootlickers to the rest. You know, last year the board unanimously, and yes, that included Trump-light Mark Farrell, supported a resolution to repeal Costa-Hawkins, and yet mod squatters flip-flopped on this very important matter. You know, as a member of the dwindling trans and queer community in this city, we need to be able to have real rent control. Because contrary to media representations, we're not all a bunch of wealthy condo dwellers who wear expensive designer clothing. Not only that, one of the most prolific organizers for landlords and against tenants' rights is a horrible cretin by the name of Josephine Zhao. You know, the deplorable who says that transgender children rape little girls and says racist things about about black and brown students. Which side are you on? Are you for the renters, or are you a flip-flopper who enables racists and transphobes? And it's an insult that we all have to be here today when this could have been passed at the full board. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Maria, and I'm from Indivisible San Francisco. And as Peter said, we support Proposition 10, and we want the board to do the same. We are facing not just a housing crisis, but an affordable housing crisis. Thank you.
Hello, good afternoon. My name is Kathy Lipscomb, and I work with Seniors in Disability Action as well as other groups. So please, on behalf of the 62% tenant majority in San Francisco, vote to recommend yes on repeal of Costa-Hawkins. On behalf of those in shelters or on the streets, vote to repeal Costa-Hawkins, which gives landlords disproportionate power over renters' lives. Please vote yes on behalf of those thousands of tenants already evicted who were forced out to Oakland and elsewhere where they unwittingly got other poorer tenants evicted, displaced, in a domino effect. Please listen to us today. Please grab this historic moment and help tenants throughout the state. Thank you.
Tony Robles, Senior in Disability Action and District 5 resident. We don't have time to play games, to commit and then not commit to sending a clear and strong message to real estate speculators, because this is primarily who this fight is geared or focused on. The big corporate landlords that are making much money on the backs of San Francisco residents and residents throughout California. One of the previous speakers said that many people that are houseless now or homeless now once had homes, but because of the affordability crisis, it's priced them out, and we've seen very dire consequences that have happened to people on these streets. People have died, people have ended up with no shelter, and it's a complete disgrace. The repeal of Costa-Hawkins will allow cities, will allow local municipalities to enact rent control appropriate to their area. San Francisco has to send a message. There's been so much fallout. So many people have been hurt. So many people have suffered because of this Costa-Hawkins law. That was a deliberate law written by real estate, and we need to send a message that enough is enough, and we need to determine our own destiny locally in regards to that. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon. My name is Romonica Grayson, and I'm a resident of the Sunnydale community. We are right now in the remodeling and revitalization. I fall up under Prop 10 and Prop C. Why? Because I need to make sure that my rent is going to always be affordable and that I don't get kicked out at the same time that I'm trying to keep housing for my kids in San Francisco. Prop C is for the protection and safety for the homeless to get off the streets and be able to have permanent housing. One of the things that they're doing in the city is, this is Patricia. Patricia required housing, and she got placed out of the city. So now her kids are still here, but she doesn't receive services, so I'm gonna let her speak for herself.
Hi, my name is Patricia Alonso.
Ma'am, are you done with your 2 minutes? Because I would have to start the new 2 minutes for you. Because each person gets 2 minutes each. So if you're done, I could reset the clock for the next person.
Okay, so pretty much I'm gonna back up and let these ladies
You
speak.
have 1 minute and 10 seconds left.
I think they want to restart the clock for the next speaker.
Yeah. Okay. My name is Patricia Alonso. I work with the coalition, and I got placed out of San Francisco. My children still go to school here. I work here, and I don't think it's right that they had to displace me somewhere else because they had no housing for me. I had a voucher for subsidy, and I still got replaced somewhere else. So, I mean, I vote for Prop C.
Hello, my name is Sophia. I work with the coalition, and I also work at Dolores Street Shelters. I have a voucher in the city here, and I can't find any affordable housing. I don't want to be displaced like Patricia here in Oakland, because I work out here, my kids go to school out here, and I think that we should say yes on Prop C, yes on 10. They're giving me only 30 days, and then actually my 30 days will be ending on the 1st, so I gotta find
If you don't
housing
mind
within this
speaking
time.
directly into the mic,
My
because
30 days will be ending on the 1st, so I really have to find some type of housing, or I'll be homeless like I am, like I've been. You know, it's hard. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, good afternoon, supervisors. My name is Miguel Carrera. I work in the Coalition on Homelessness. So I come today to support Prop 10. Prop 10, I believe, is one of the great opportunities that board supervisors can support in to stopping the displacements, to stopping the evictions. So we have 7,000 homeless people in the streets without housing. We have only 1,300 beds in the whole city in San Francisco for these folks. Can we imagine how many folks we put in one bed in the shelters? It's ridiculous. You guys need to support Prop 10. And I want to let you know, we're working on the Proposition C, and I want you guys to support in Proposition C too, because Proposition C, they want to generate almost $300 million for housing to place 4,000 people and preventing homelessness. Please support Proposition C, is Proposition 10, and voting in favor of the Proposition C, because it's the only way we can stop in the evictions. Thank you very much. Have a great day.
Good afternoon, everybody. I am a Veritas tenant. I've been a resident of the city for 48 years, and I started my action with the International Hotel back in the days. We need to pass this Proposition 10 because real estate speculators and real estate industry bribed our politicians in Sacramento while I was sleeping, and they passed those legislation. We need to overturn this and give power back to the people. We are 18 million renters in California. We shall never be defeated, and they need your support.
Good afternoon. Teresa Flandrick with Senior and Disability Action, as well as North Beach Tenants Committee. Many of my neighbors in North Beach who happen to be homeowners, who happen to be landlords, are telling me that they are suffering because our community is being destroyed. People are being evicted. People are being forced out because the rents have been much too high for much too long. So for our communities, for homeowners, for also those small property owners that really want their communities back, just as we as renters want our communities back, you have a choice right now to support this proposition. To support it because you care about the many of San Franciscans that are currently suffering under this very speculative economic period. So I urge you, each of you who has not been quite certain as to whether this would hurt or help your constituents, if you are homeowners, this isn't going to touch you. If you are homeowners, this could help you remain with a community that is there to support you through raising your children, through aging in place and dying in your city. So please support Proposition 10 today. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Becky Hom. I'm with Causa Justa Just Cause. As you all should know, we have a tenant rights clinic, and currently we're seeing multiple tenants that are being either harassed and not having repairs done. All these different issues in order because their landlords know that they can raise the rent if they kick people out. We also have plenty of people with Costa-Hawkins rent increases. We have one multi-member family is living in one place together, and I believe they live in a single-family home, so they are not covered by rent control. They are paying $5,000 a month in rent. They are scraping everything together, deciding, do their kids, what their kids are able to get, what kind of food they're able to have based on this exorbitant rent. We have another family, the Sanchez Salazar family, who has come to us multiple times. There was a fire in their unit. The landlord actually tried to not have them return. They had been trying to reach out to their landlord, and they only were able to find out that their unit was listed on, I think it was Trulia, and so they contacted the landlord, let him know that they saw that, and were able to move back in. The landlord tried to give him a Costa-Hawkins rent increase. They were able to negotiate some down, but now they have one again. It's due starting October 1st. And if they have to pay, they can't afford it. They're going to become evicted. There's a 6-month-old baby, and one of their son, it's a mother and a grandmother and their children. If they get evicted, one of their sons is going to have to drop out of college in order to help move back and help support the family. These are real life consequences, and we really want to just repeal so we can have local control and decide what needs to be happen. So vote yes on this. Thank you.
Good afternoon, supervisors. My name is Ken Trey, retired high school teacher, former member of the United Educators of San Francisco Executive Board, and today I'm here representing UESF and the 6,200 teachers and paraeducators working in our schools. Last year, 500 teachers left the district. The year before, a similar number. The numbers have been going up. We know there is a crisis. There's a teacher shortage crisis, and San Francisco is desperately trying to recruit enough people so that we have a credentialed classroom teacher in every classroom. And that's becoming more and more difficult because of the exorbitant cost of housing in San Francisco. We've gone from a city, when I first moved here in '71, a working class city, to a city of haves and have-nots. Those who say let the market forces prevail in housing and that somehow trickle-down housing will allow teachers and our students' families to afford to live here are badly mistaken. We need government to step up and provide security, housing security for working class and middle class San Franciscans. It remains to be said that we have at least 2,500 homeless students in San Francisco. Most people who are on our streets actually were living in the city. Many of them were tenants. Please support Prop 10. Thank you.
Good afternoon, supervisors. My name is Alex Landsberg. I was here for an unrelated matter, but was motivated to comment after seeing all these folks lined up. I am a San Francisco resident. I'm also a small property owner. I own a 2-unit building in which I live with my family, and we rent out a lower unit studio. And I wanted to say, as a property owner in the sort of, I guess, man bites dog perspective, we support Prop 10, we support Prop C. We think it's absolutely important to protect our most vulnerable populations. We think that both my wife and I think that rent control has been absolutely not a problem for us as small landlords, because for the very simple fact that when we enter into a rental agreement with someone, the numbers work. And just because the market happens to go up a few $100s or a few dollars per square foot in the intervening years doesn't change the underlying economics that led us to reach the lease that we did. I have kids in the San Francisco public schools, and what Mr. Trey was saying is absolutely right on. My son tells me about his homeless peers at Everett Middle School. At McKinley School, elementary school, we've seen teachers and families leave because of the housing situation, and we really need to do something. And that's something that we need to do. Thank you.
Good evening, supervisors and listening audience. My name is Ace, better known as Ace on the Case. Well, I originally come to speak on the next item that's coming up in Hunters Point, but since you're talking about the homeless and Prop 10, those things, I thought it would be remiss if I'd get up here and speak because, number one, first of all, everybody give their titles. Well, I'm Ace on the Case in Fillmore, and I'm also executive director of a new organization that's coming out. It's called CASE, Community Assistance Service Enterprise. Because, ladies and gentlemen, I've been through the whole ringer, from the middle class down to the homeless and even to your medical facility where I had to have surgery on my head. So I'm a living witness about the homeless. But also, I stand before you as a black man, dealing with issues on homeless, where our community has been driven out of this city of gentrification. But I just want to say this in closing. I'm here on a case. I'll be coming back to City Hall in the press room. So I'm going to be covering these issues where our conservative press don't even get a chance to tell you about it. So I'm going to be on the ground here talking about all these issues from A to Z. I got 48 seconds left here. But I just wanted to show, I'm a person, you look at me, I'm homeless, whether you believe it or not. I had to go through the shelters, the SROs, and then I had surgery, so I'm in a special housing right now. But I'm looking for housing myself. My entire family are well-to-do, but they live all across the Bay. All of my family. I'm the only one here of my immediate family. I'm 64 years old. I don't look it, but I am 64. I'm a senior. But I'm here to tell the city and county by the Bay, which y'all call City Hall. I call it Silly Hall, but I think London gonna try to change it back to City Hall. But I'm from the Fillmo. They call it the Phil, no mo, because we don't have anything that y'all talk about, housing and none of that. I'll be back to talk a little later.
Hi, my name is Sarah Fred Sherburn-Zimmer. I'm with Housing Rights Committee. This shouldn't be something that's hard. Proposition 10 only lets the city pass local laws. Like, all it's doing is giving you all permission to debate whether you pass a better rent control law or a stronger one. It does nothing to mandate anything. And in San Francisco, this is a clear case of you're either for rent control or you aren't. You can't pretend to be for tenants and against evictions and not vote for this. And we know, Katie Tang, that you've never been for tenants and always been in the pocket of developers. But for the rest of the supervisors, including Supervisor Safai, apologies, Safai, this is a clear case. If you believe in rent control, you need to vote for this. Because in this city, whether you live in the Marina, the Excelsior, the Bayview, or the Sunset, we have a rent crisis. And you aren't for rent control if you don't vote for our ability as a city of San Francisco to have the rent control we need to stop the rents from going up. I want to tell you the story of my friend Keith. He's been in his unit for 20 years. He moved into it with his girlfriend 6 months after she moved there. She just died. His landlord doubled his rent. He's moving out of his apartment. Every senior has a target on their back because of Costa-Hawkins. Vote yes if you believe in rent control. Otherwise, you are making a very clear line that you don't stand for tenants and you do not stand for rent control. There's only two sides on this.
All that was good. My name is Leotis Martin. I'm a Bayview Hunters Point person. Rent control. Well, it seems like these people that own these places have a hammer over somebody's head, and they can let that hammer go anytime they want. That's not right. That's not no control. That's a control issue. It's not fair. I remember when I was about 14 years old, my grandmother was living at this place on Church Street for many years, 30, 40, 50 years. All of a sudden, her rent went up, and she couldn't pay rent no more. I mean, she couldn't make it. Her husband had already passed away, so she had to move. It was a hurt feeling after a person been there 40, 50 years of their life. I just say that to say we need rent control.
The earlier female speaker was right. Tang, you two, all of you. There's only one of you on the 4 panel that's for support of the most vulnerable people, low income and very low income people having housing. And the only ones up there that's demonstrated and backing that is Sandra. Jane Kim, Tang, and South IE, all of you, you have press conference and try to price fix and brainwash the community and claim that the new low income is $125,000 a year. And you have the nerve to talk about your board of supervisors. In my view, you're an A1 bigot, discriminating against low-income bracket people. You have a housing opportunity at Mission Rock where it says 15% of those 1,500 apartment unit complexes is supposed to be for low-income bracket people, and you deliberately price fix and make the lowest income at a range higher than the low-income bracket and very low-income bracket people can afford. That's fraud. That means 225 of those apartments is supposed to be for low-income bracket people. You use a Hispanic female and her child as your pitch person on a commercial for years to make it appear that she can afford to live in that Mission Rock apartment building complex when you know goddamn well her income is not high enough to afford to live in there and be a tenant and her teacher too. And then about these housing bonds, you always make housing bonds for people in high income brackets. All of you, especially you, Tank. Every housing bond you make is for people that's making $125,000 a year or more, and you're talking about it's affordable housing for low-income bracket people. You're a damn lie. So I moved to have you incorporate this, and it's just a matter of time before you end up in federal court. You're sitting over there laughing now.
I understand his point.
You're a goddamn bigot.
I've tried to explain to him that we have different types of program.
And I appreciate you at the hearing talking about I'm being decisive and I'm epitomizing.
Thank you. I want to give the next speaker a chance to speak. Thank you. Excuse me. Sorry. Just
radioactive material, and then you sit up there and lie and you shut the door in his face.
all right. Thank you. Next speaker, please. Thanks for your patience.
Thank you, Supervisors. Deepa Varma from the San Francisco Tenants Union. I see that Supervisor Safai is left, but I hope he listens to my comments wherever he is. At the Tenants Union, every week we see people who come in whose mother, whose father, whose husband, or whose wife has died or is dying, and they ask, will I be able to stay? And we have to tell them no. We have to tell them, because of Costa-Hawkins, you are out of luck and you are going to be pushed out of your place because the landlord is going to raise the rent to any amount they want without restriction. Passing Prop 10 and supporting Prop 10 as the supervisors in this city is the single biggest thing that you can do to help with the crisis. It's the single biggest thing you can do for low-income people, for homeless people, for middle-income people, for teachers, for workers. It's the single biggest thing you can do to help support San Francisco in this moment. We have to ask you, and you have to ask yourselves today, which side are you on? Are you on the side of renters? Are you on the side of low and middle income people? Are you on the side of labor? Are you on the side of the California Democratic Party? Or are you on the side of Wall Street and the 1% and the real estate dollars? Because that's what this conversation is about. That's what Prop 10 is about. Thank you so much, Supervisor Fewer, for your support as a small landlord, for showing that small landlords can support Prop 10. Thank you so much to the gentleman who spoke earlier for saying that you're doing fine right now and that we can support renters in this moment rather than just only caring about how much profit you can make. This question is about whether you support San Francisco and San Francisco's ability to pass the laws we need. San Francisco's ability to update for current conditions versus our housing rules and regulations being controlled by an industry that only cares about profit and the big players in that industry, the biggest landlords. Small landlords support us and homeowners support us, and most of all, this is a city of 62% renters, and for every renter in this city, please, please support Prop 10 and vote yes on this resolution. Thank you.
Good afternoon, supervisors. My name is Fernando Martí with the Council of Community Housing Organizations. Deepa and myself and a few others just came from a press conference for United for Housing Justice, a new coalition bringing together labor, community, faith, tenants around a united platform for housing. And I want to begin by commending each of you for the work that you have done for producing more housing in San Francisco. The work that Supervisor Peskin, Supervisor Kim have done around inclusionary housing, the work that Supervisor Tang has done around a density bonus, the work, the conversations we're having with Supervisor Safai around educator housing, the meetings that we've had with Supervisor Few around bringing new housing into her district. But part of where we start with United for Housing Justice is that we need to begin by protecting tenants, by preserving the communities that we have right now and moving on to producing more housing for future generations. And that means, for many of us, for all of you, I would hope, supporting Proposition 10, supporting the ability of cities to pass their own rent control measures the way that works for their communities and not allowing the real estate lobby to handcuff all of us and to keep us from having real rent control. Because I know that all of you believe that housing is important. We need to begin by protecting tenants whenever, wherever, at all times so they can remain in their homes. Thank you. I hope you will support the resolution to support Prop 10.
Good afternoon, Supervisors. Connie Ford, San Francisco Labor Council. I just am here to reiterate something you probably have already heard and you already know. But the largest labor organization in California that really guides us for our state recommendations, the California Federation of Labor, voted overwhelmingly to support Prop 10. They're the ones who guide the General Labor Council, all the labor movement in the city. And the reason they did, the really reason they did is that they believe in local control over this issue. Issue can be contentious in almost every community, but every community has different needs and different asks. And this will allow every county to make the decision that works best for them. So the idea is we have whatever we want to do in San Francisco, we hash it out, we fight it out, we talk it out, and then we can make our own recommendations for our own residents. So I just urge you to consider that strongly, that sense that we all want to take sort of control, a little bit better control over our own lives, and let's let the counties decide individually what they can do, and that's what the State Federation of Labor is recommending, and that's what we're recommending. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other members of the public who wish to comment on this item? Okay, seeing none, public comment is closed, and we are also joined by Supervisor Peskin, the author of this resolution. Welcome.
Thank you, Chair Tang, and I apologize for not being here earlier, but didn't think this would come up until 3 o'clock. So I'll keep my remarks brief because I can see that you've engaged in a lot of discussion, and we talked about it at the full board where it appeared actually 2 times, and there's been public comment here today. But I do want to highlight just a couple of recent developments in the discussion around this topic, and chief amongst them being the UC Berkeley Haas Institute report released just last week. And I wanted to read the executive summary because I think it quite fairly and professionally summarizes why we're taking this matter up today and why the voters are taking it up in November. So I will read this into the record. California is at a tipping point. Both the government and private market are failing to meet the needs of a vast majority of the state's 17.5 million renters. Skyrocketing rents, intensifying threats of eviction, and ongoing displacement are all part of a broader crisis of widening inequality and structural exclusion that is testing our values and identity as a state. The consequences are far-reaching. People are being pushed out of their communities into homelessness and away from jobs and opportunity. As a state, we face health, environmental, economic, and societal costs that can last generations. The extent of these long-term harms will be determined in part by how we respond today. This moment requires that local governments have the ability to enact immediate solutions to protect tenants from unfair rent increases as well as wholesale evictions. The report goes on to detail the several unique and essential benefits that rent control provides, and particularly in our current housing challenges. The report finds that rent control is cost-effective policy with immediate effects and refutes the argument that rent control has negative impacts on housing development and is not supported by research and easily mitigated by other policy and investment mechanisms. In contrast to long-term strategies to address our housing crisis, rent control is a critical short-term strategy which allows us to stop the bleeding in our communities so that we can create the space to strategize as we have done in inclusionary housing and other policy matters. So I really hope that we will pass this and send it to the board. I think this board, in my experience, and I can say that having served on a number of different boards, will grapple if Costa-Hawkins no longer exists with the minutia of the policy that's before us. Supervisor Kim said when this was before the Board of Supervisors that as to new construction, there should be a rolling effective date. I actually went to the San Francisco Chronicle with a professor who was extolling the virtues of getting rid of Costa-Hawkins, who actually shared that policy point of view with Supervisor Kim. But we will grapple with that if and hopefully when the voters of the state of California repeal Costa-Hawkins and pass Proposition 10. I think we showed during the inclusionary housing debates that we can find that sweet spot. And I think we can do that here at the San Francisco Board of Supervisors. Did somebody just go out that window? Is that what I just saw, Deputy?
When?
Oh, all right.
Can we check on it, please? Thank you.
You want to take a look at that, Deputy? Wasn't windy out there 5 minutes ago. All right. So with that, Madam Chair, committee members, I don't have a vote on this panel, but I hope that you will forward this to the full Board of Supervisors so that we can deliberate that there. As we all know, this actually passed with more than a majority of the board, but because of the particulars around the rule that it was being considered on needed 8 votes and garnered 7 out of 11. So I hope that you will send it to the full board where we can, if any city in the state of California should be supporting Prop 10, I think it should be the city and county of San Francisco. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor President. Supervisor Fewer.
Yes, thank you very much, Chair. I just want to state also for the record that I am a landlord myself, and I'm a homeowner, and I'm a small property owner, of course. But I also know that in order for San Francisco to remain a healthy city, to stop the bleeding, the homelessness, to have a healthy economy, and also just to be a San Francisco that I think we can all be proud of, that is inclusive. We have to have racial diversity. We have to have economic diversity. We have to have seniors and families and young people. And we need to have teachers and librarians and nurses and clerks and child care workers and school workers and social workers and the people that serve your children lunch during the school day. And we need police officers and firefighters. And we need superintendents of schools. And the reason I mention that is because our own past superintendent renting a single-family home for $4,000 a month, in 1 month his rent was raised to $7,000 a month. This is what we're talking about. I know that small property owners are different than large corporate apartment owners, and I am sensitive to that. But all this does is allow us to come together and look for solutions around our housing affordability crisis, but also balance it between small property owners and large apartment corporate owners that are corporations. I think it is time that San Francisco actually had the ability to do so. When I see in my own district that I have seniors who are 88 years old being evicted, they can't keep up with this market of rent. I feel for them. They have lived all their lives in the Richmond district. What is your answer to them? So I just urge my colleagues on this board to look at what's happening around you in San Francisco and to tie our hands to even have the simple civil conversation and discussion that is so long overdue about how we can make this city once again a viable city for everyone and our moderate wage earners such as our teachers and our police officers and our social workers and even the people here who are clerks at City Hall, the people who work for city departments. They are all also suffering under our inability to actually address this issue. I hope this can simply get out of committee so at the full board we can have a discussion, and when this passes in the state of California, we can come together, all of us come together, and have a real discussion about what is equitable and how property owners can get a fair return on their investment while also serving the people of San Francisco that are so severely needed in order to run this city. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Fewer. Supervisor Kim? I just want to thank all of our committee members for coming out, but actually more importantly, the organizing work that you're doing throughout the state of California to put Proposition 10 on the ballot. This is something that we have been talking about for decades, the repeal of Costa-Hawkins, and the effort to even get this on the November ballot was an incredibly heavy lift and a discussion that we've been having for such a long time. The work, although I'm happy to be a sponsor of this today and will be voting for this at Land Use Committee, the work will be, of course, outside of the city and county of San Francisco and making sure that we can convince voters that in this housing crisis that what we are really seeing is an affordability crisis. And when my middle-income friends who are attorneys have to live in Hercules and commute all the way to San Francisco, I just feel that we have no hope for so many of our residents that make less. And increasingly, as housing prices go out of hand throughout the Bay Area, the most critical question in front of us is who gets to live here? And in many ways, then, who gets to work here if we ask that question? More than a building crisis, I really believe that we have an affordability crisis. We can build as much market and luxury rate housing as possible, but I don't believe that that will ever bring down the price of rent if we don't have some form of regulation. Housing is just a very different type of good. While we do want toothpaste and other goods regulated, a home is something that is critical to our safety and our well-being. And there is no way for us to pursue economic gains, to pursue really our life, the safety of our families, if we don't have a safe place to live. And it's an industry that should be regulated. It should be a very different type of industry. And those that participate in it should understand that there are limited profits in this world because it is also the way we house people. I said this a couple weeks ago at the full board meeting, but this is just a repeal of Costa-Hawkins. It does not set new rent control laws. And in fact, this would give jurisdictions like San Francisco an opportunity to debate those issues. And for those that fear what this Board of Supervisors may implement, I think you only need to look at our history over the last couple of decades to know this board moves slowly. That we really debate issues, whether it is condo conversion or short-term rentals or eviction protection 2.0, that there's a lot of negotiating, that we listen to all stakeholders, and we certainly don't want a structure of laws that are untenable for everybody, including our small property owners and landlords who provide this type of housing. I do want to remind this board that we unanimously passed a resolution in support of Assemblyman David Chu's Bill AB 1506, which effectively repealed Costa-Hawkins, almost word for word the same language as Proposition 10 today. And I look forward to a unanimous support of this resolution before us, the same as we did exactly a year ago. And I also hope that all the members of the public will stay for our next series of items. It's important to support the symbolic resolution, but we actually have a major housing development with 1,500 units of housing that is slated for approval at this Board of Supervisors, and this is
absolutely a development that the community should be engaged in and watching over.
Thank you. Supervisor Peskin.
Actually, Supervisor Kim just made my point with regard to Assembly Bill 1506 that was voted on in October of 2017 by each and every member of the current board. So thank you for making that point, Supervisor Kim.
Thank you. Thank you, colleagues, and thank you, of course, Supervisor Peskin and Fewer for bringing this resolution up. I know that I made many of these remarks at the full board meeting as well, but of course I have that difficult job of really trying to provide different perspectives on this issue. I disagree with some of the public comment that I've never been for tenants as someone who was a renter pretty much my entire adult life, having also, as I said at the Board of Supervisors meeting, benefited from rent control myself and have cringed at the thought when I get these rent increase letters myself too, even if it might be a couple $100s versus say the thousands that unfortunately our superintendent is dealing with. However, I think that at the ground level, what I hear day to day from our residents, especially the single family homeowners, is something that they are very concerned about the repeal of Costa-Hawkins and what that might do to their situation in their homes. And so while I want to support this dialogue regarding Proposition 10, I do want to propose potentially some amendments to this resolution. I would like to pass it out to the full board so that we can vote this out at the Board of Supervisors. But just some affirmation about single-family homes being exempted from rent control, and that any application of rent control to new construction should be adopted only after an economic analysis from the controller. I know that other jurisdictions and even some members of this board, it's not a new concept, but the idea of the so-called rolling rent control is something that I'm very interested in having our city further analyze, and so I wanted to at least include that piece in this resolution. So again, it is something that I believe, as a representative of the Sunset District, where we have many single-family homes, that as Supervisor Fewer said, there are very many differences between small property homeowners versus large corporate building owners from multi-unit buildings. And so I wanted to at least, again, as a representative of a district with many single-family homes, insert that provision in here. So with that, Supervisor Safai.
Thank you, Chair. I really appreciate all the conversation today and all the folks coming out. I actually think that this conversation really benefited from coming to committee. I think that, yes, we did support something back in the fall. It was a slightly different piece of legislation, and it was actually through the legislative process. And for me, as it now is on the ballot, I have also had a lot of stories of people that have faced eviction. I am not oblivious to the fact that we are in a housing crisis. We have schools that can't fill teachers in our district. I know the Supervisor Fewer and others have led on this issue for a really long time. As Fernando said, we're working on a conversation about teacher housing and how we can tackle that. And four members of this committee worked on Home SF as well as the inclusionary housing conversation to expand opportunities. So I am a supporter of rent control. I think that this is a really healthy conversation. I do also believe that the idea of how it plays out on the ground in terms of single-family homeowners, I know that we have the highest number of owner-occupied homes, a lot of seniors that are actually aging in place that rent out some small space and do that as a way to continue to live with dignity in their homes, as well as others that have been long-time landlords that rent out their space. And so I worry, ultimately, without having that not part of the conversation, that people would face immediate rent increases or be asked to leave their homes that they've lived in for a long time because they're in a single-family home if this were to be applied to them. That being said, I am supportive of the resolution. I think if we could make some amendments as well as to the conversation about doing an economic analysis on new construction. I appreciated what Supervisor Kim had to say the other day on the application of rolling rents. I think you certainly would want to continue those that are lending to these projects, affordable and otherwise, being able to continue to have confidence to invest in San Francisco's market. I think that's an important part of the conversation. So an economic analysis is. So I would be supportive of that language, or if you have some additional thoughts on that.
Yes, I thank you, Supervisor Safai. I wanted to actually propose maybe two different resolve clauses so that colleagues can take action on both. So one would be what I said originally, that the City and County of San Francisco also affirms that single-family homes should be exempted from rent control, but then a second further resolve clause that says that any application of rent control to new construction and or single-family homes should be adopted only after an economic analysis from the Controller's Office. So we'll separate that into two different clauses. Okay. Okay,
Thanks,
so Supervisor Fewer.
Yes, I'd just like to comment on the amendment. The idea of Costa-Hawkins, of repealing Costa-Hawkins, is so that we can actually have a discussion on what should be exempted and what shouldn't be exempted. And should there be caps on it? And should it relate to people who have homes that are owner occupied? I mean, to put this before even having discussion with a larger group of people, I think is actually what people are afraid of. People are actually afraid that this board will make decisions without them at the table and not having a full discussion backed up by any type of data or even serious input from the community. And so for this board to come forward already saying, if it passes, this is what we say, is really opposite of what Costa-Hawkins will allow us to do. Costa-Hawkins, the repeal of Costa-Hawkins will allow us to have these conversations. And so for this board to decide first, even before a meeting with any community members or anything, saying, oh, I want to exempt single-family homes. I'm not saying we should or we shouldn't. I'm saying that if Costa-Hawkins is repealed, it allows us to have this full and rich conversation for once. And to determine the outcome of that conversation, even before Costa-Hawkins is repealed, is really opposite of really what the repeal of Costa-Hawkins will allow us to do. I don't have a vote in this committee, of course, but I just want to caution members of this board, you are doing exactly what the community is afraid what will happen, is that things will be decided upon without having a full discussion. And I just want to caution the board on this decision if you were to pass this out with this amendment. Thank you.
Thank you. I hear you, Supervisor Fewer. And I'll just say again, this is a policy statement. I actually highly doubt that we'll be voting at the board on the actual language of if there is an appeal here, that a policy before the Board of Supervisors. I think as was stated, the full board last time this was there, I imagine it might be taken to the ballot directly. So this is, insertion of this language is simply my way of trying to, again, provide actually balance in this conversation. So with that, Supervisor Kim?
Thank you, Supervisor Tang. I'm happy to support the second further be resolved that this board would engage in an economic analysis. It's what I would want to do if we talk about a rolling rent control and who's exempt and who's not exempt. I think that certainly makes sense, and it's something that this board would do anyway. I cannot yet support the first further be it resolved that we would definitively exclude single-family homes from the rent control ordinance. While that may end up being the right policy position, and I certainly can understand many of the arguments to exempt single-family homes, I would want to better understand the policy reasons and, of course, engage with our community stakeholders and the economic analysis before that. So I won't be voting for the First Amendment, but I will be voting for the second.
Thank you. So any other questions, comments, colleagues? Okay.
Madam Chair, I'd just say,
yes.
as long as you can get it to the full board, we can deal with it there.
Absolutely. Supervisor Safai.
I just wanted to ask, through the chair, Supervisor Kim, were you saying that you potentially could get to that point on single-family homes after an economic analysis and further discussion?
I think that yes.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay, so colleagues, again, I have the proposed amendment, so why don't we take them separately? So the first clause just has to do with the single-family homes, and the second one has to do with the economic analysis. So let's do roll call vote on the first one.
On the motion to amend the legislation for the first part of the language affirming rent control, Supervisor Safai?
Aye.
Safai, aye. Supervisor Kim?
No?
Kim, no. Supervisor Tang?
Aye.
Tang, aye. There are 2 ayes and 1 no with Supervisor Kim in dissent.
Okay, so the first amendment is adopted, and then the second one, again, having to do with the economic analysis for new construction and/or single-family homes. Roll call, please.
On the motion to amend as stated, Supervisor Safai?
Aye.
Safai, aye. Supervisor Kim?
Aye.
Kim, aye. Supervisor Tang?
Aye.
Aye. There are 3 ayes.
Okay, so that amendment, the second amendment passes, and then on the underlying item, Supervisor Peskin.
I was just going to make a friendly suggestion as a non-committee member that given the split vote on the first amendment that you all send it as amended without recommendation.
Okay. All right, so can we have a motion on that?
I'll make
So
a
that's-
motion to move this forward without recommendation to the full board.
As amended.
As amended.
Okay, and can we do that without objection? Okay, we'll do that without objection. All right, thanks everyone. And now we're going to trade spots and bring Supervisor Cohen in and go back to items 7 through 11.
Items 9 through 11?
Oh, I mean, sorry, 9 through 11. Okay. Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm not going to, I don't know if the kid will have that.
Actually, I think owner. But it's like, you can't just do all single-family homes. I mean, I know.
I mean, I definitely.
Supervisor Cohen?
Superintendent conversation, there has to be something.
No,
but
I'm what really.
I don't know if it has to be the same.
Is truly what you said is that like because people that are living in them for a long time, some of them they didn't do the absorbent increase, but they brought it up to the market rate. A lot of these families would have to leave. So it just worries me about the application.
Okay, we have Supervisor Cohen here now. So, Supervisor, you have the floor for India Basin.
Thank you, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. You guys ready?
Ready. Let's go.
Got it. All right. So, items 9 through 11. Thank you. Good afternoon, Chair Tang. I appreciate you for hearing this item today. What I'm doing is I'm proposing some amendments that I hope that you will take after public comment. They're non-substantive amendments, and they pertain to clarifying the language that is used to define the off-street parking use definition. I'm here today to emphasize my support of the India Basin Mixed-Use Project in the district, and specifically in District 10. At this time, we as a city are working to find solutions to the housing crisis. And this development has the potential to provide over 1,500 housing units that are desperately needed. I just want to give you a brief overview about this project. It is comprised of 28 acres of privately owned land, 6 acres of Rec and Park owned India Basin open space, and nearly 6 acres of unimproved and unaccepted right-of-ways. So you may recall this development is one of the projects that was identified in the Southern Bayfront strategy presented to the Board of Supervisors last year. Just as a quick refresher, the Southern Bayfront strategy seeks to maximize the public benefits across the entire neighborhood in 7 principled areas in housing, transit, jobs, open space. It gives much needed attention to sea level rise, sustainability, and equity and community facilities. It's through this framework that my office and staff has prioritized the negotiations with the negotiations for the community benefits for this particular project. I focused on supporting a robust and affordable housing program for this development. You should know that it ensures 25% affordable housing units are made available, and that is approximately 394 below market rate units available again for this particular project. Of that number, at least 139 will be inclusionary housing units within market rate buildings, and there will also be 3 parcels within the project site that will be dedicated space for a partnership with a nonprofit community affordable housing developer to develop on. At full build-out, the open space will include a total of 14 acres of publicly accessible parks, plaza, bike trails, as well as pedestrian pathways. $10 million will be contributed to an off-site transportation improvement fund, which this section of the district is in desperate need of. In addition to housing and open space, this project will provide first source job hiring opportunities for both construction and permanent on-site jobs. I'm enthusiastic about the opportunity presented by this project to bring an array of units that are beautifully restored. I hope that you will join me in supporting the items today. We've got staff here to make presentations. Supervisor Tang and Supervisor Kim, thank you. I have no other remarks at this time. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Supervisor Cohen. So we'll go back to the presentation, and we had Matt Schneider here from Planning first, and then Build and OEWD speaking next afterwards.
Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisors. I'm Matt Snyder of Planning Department staff. We will be making a presentation for you today on the India Basin Mixed Use Project. I will begin with a broad overview that puts the actual actions before you into a context, and then we'll describe the actual actions that are before you. After that, I'm going to turn it over to Nicole Averill of Recreation and Park Department staff. She will give you an overview of their portion of the project. You will then hear from Courtney Pash of Build Inc., who will describe the Build Inc.'s project. I'm sorry, it's just Build's a project of 700 Innis. After that, Ann Topier of OEWD will provide you with more information on the actual provisions of the development agreement. And so for just a quick overview, India Basin, again, is located in the Bayview Hunters Point community. It's just northwest of the Hunters Point shipyard and north of Hunters Point Hill. The entirety of the project consists of 38 acres and can be further divided into 2 components. As you see on the diagram before you, the northwest half, or I should say the third of the site, is proposed to be developed by Rec and Park. It consists of the existing India Basin Shoreline Park and also the newly acquired site at 900 Innis. 900 Innis is most well known as the site for the historic Shipwrights Cottage. The southeastern portion of the proposed project will be developed by India Basin Investments, actually better known as Build. Referred to as 700 Innis, it consists of another RPD project that we refer to as the India Basin Open Space, and then 700 Innis itself, which is approximately 17 acres of privately owned parcels, and then also unimproved public works right-of-way. So if we zoom out a little bit to put this in a little bit of a context, this project is being envisioned as part of a series of open spaces within the India Basin neighborhood, including the existing, improved, and new open space, starting with Heron's Head Park, moving down through the existing or the previously power plant to the site that we will describe today, and then moving into the series of open spaces at the shipyard. And again, to just blow it up, to zoom out again, to just remind you, we're considering this project in the context of the Southern Bayfront strategy, which Supervisor Cohen has just described to you. The actions before you are going to focus on the portion of the project, 700 Innis, that'll be developed by Build. Again, this will take an existing vacant site, zoned for industrial, and turn it into a mixed-use project that creates 1,575 units 209,000 square feet of non-residential supportive uses, and then 14 acres of new and rehabilitated open space. So you have three actions before you that will enable this project. The first is the general plan amendments. General plan amendments are being made to the Bayview Hunters Point area plan, the commerce and industry element, the urban design element, and the recreation and open space element. And what it simply does is this site, the 700 Innes site, is identified for light industrial and industrial development. We're just changing those designations to make them mixed use per the current proposal, to make sure that the heights align with the proposal, and then to make a few cleanup corrections in the recreation and open space element. The second action before you are planning code map and text amendments. The map amendments we can describe in two sections. We are looking, and when I say map amendments, we're looking at the really zoning redesignations. We're looking at 900 Innes, which is currently zoned for industrial use, to rezone that for open space. And then similarly for the 700 Innes project, also currently zoned for industrial use, for mixed-use development. Perhaps most importantly, we're going to create a special use district for the 700 Innes site. The special use district will essentially be the one place to go for development controls, for land use, for building controls. The SUD will do something else that we've been doing with a lot of these other development projects. It will refer to a separate design standards and guidelines document. That document will give very precise instructions for development, but it also looks to guide development, vertical development, along with the development of the streets and the open space so that they're well coordinated. That concludes my portion of the presentation. The third action before you is the development agreement with Ann Topier. We'll describe it first. We're going to hear from Nicole Averill from Rec and Park and Courtney Pash from Build.
Thank you very much, Mr. Schneider.
Good afternoon, supervisors. As Matt noted, in 2014, the Recreation and Parks Department acquired 900 Innes at India Basin. At India Basin, the department, in partnership with the Bayview Hunters Point community, the Trust for Public Land, and the San Francisco Parks Alliance, endeavors to build a park that's both spectacular and crucial to the health of San Francisco's southeast communities, which have been historically underserved. The proposed plan combines 900 Innes with the existing India Basin Shoreline Park into one 10-acre waterfront park development that, among many other things, closes a critical gap in the San Francisco Bay Trail and cleans up a brownfield. The property is also the midpoint of the 1.5-mile-long contiguous India Basin shorefront in an equity zone that lacks open space. As such, there's a unique opportunity to design the India Basin shoreline as a seamless waterfront experience on a grand scale. From the 1850s to the mid-1900s, the neighborhood was an economically thriving community in the industrial heart of the city, home to industries which included military shipbuilding, boat building, and other heavy industrial uses. These historically polluting industries' legacy of contaminated sites and physical blight have caused the Bayview Hunters Point neighborhood to disproportionately bear a higher level of environmental and health burden. Furthermore, since its wartime peak and subsequent closure of the Hunters Point Naval Shipyard, the community has experienced multiple challenges, including high unemployment, significant poverty, youth at risk, low-performing schools, residential isolation, disinvestment, and the lack of safe recreational opportunities, especially those related to the waterfront. In response, the India Basin Park Project provides a tremendous opportunity to provide recreational activities, including bay access, to improve the health of the community and the environment, and to address social equity issues in this historic, underserved neighborhood. To envision the future of the India Basin shoreline, in 2015, Mayor Ed Lee and Supervisor Cohen asked over 30 Bayview Hunters Point community leaders and key regional stakeholders to participate on a task force to guide the development of this extraordinary network of new and renovated shoreline parks, while also taking into consideration the considerable planning work done previously by the community. More than 24 public meetings and outreach events regarding the park development project have been held. To encourage meeting attendance, we worked with APRI, who distributed multilingual flyers and posters to local businesses, schools, community centers, and public housing projects, as well as a network of nonprofit organizations serving the Bayview Hunters Point community. Additional outreach methods included social media, dedicated email lists, local print and e-newsletters. The park project was also presented at community events such as Sunday Streets and the Black Love Festival. Task force members and the public determined what programs and amenities they wanted along the shoreline, and then we layered what folks wanted with technical studies such as environmental and sea level rise studies, which informed what could go where. And in 2016, a design competition for the park project resulted in the choice of internationally renowned firm Gustus & Guthrie Nickel, designers of the National Museum of African American History and the recipient of the National Landscape Architecture Firm Award.
Thank you. And Supervisor Kim has a question.
And this came up actually in some of the comments made by members of the public in letters to the Board of Supervisors. But this is a question actually for the Planning Department in terms of whether it releases notice of preparations in multiple languages around the EIR and draft requests for comments. And I asked this question, I understand that it did not happen and the Planning Department is correcting future notices, but we really can't have true community participation if our major language groups are not included in those notices.
Michael Lee, Planning Department staff. When the notice of preparation was published and distributed, it was sent in English. Green Action contacted the department and asked us to translate the notice into Spanish. It was translated into Spanish, but due to a procedural error, the notice was never distributed to Green Action. Moving forward, when we published the notice of availability and the draft EIR, we translated the NOA into Chinese, Spanish, and Tagalog. The project sponsor, Build, paid to have the summary chapter of the draft EIR translated into Chinese and Spanish, and we posted all of those documents on the department's website.
And what is the general protocol for all of these notices at the Planning Department?
Under CEQA, there's no requirement to translate notices or documents into...
I know that wasn't my question. My question wasn't whether CEQA required it. I know that CEQA does not. But as a city where we ensure inclusion and language access, what is the Planning Department's protocol for when we translate outreach notices in Spanish and Chinese?
We translate notices upon request.
Okay, I think we have to change this practice. There are too many members in San Francisco that speak Spanish and Chinese as their primary language, and especially in a neighborhood that is as diverse as District 10, you're not doing real outreach if people can't read or understand the notices. And so I'm not going to squibble over what happened in this particular case, but overall, I'm very concerned that the Planning Department doesn't have a protocol on when they provide notices in the major languages that the city requires. And so whether state law requires it or not, the city should go above and beyond because it ensures that perhaps a third of our residents don't have an opportunity to provide comment because they basically don't know about it. I just hope that we can have, I'd like the Planning Department by tomorrow to come to this board with an actual detailed plan of when it provides translated notification. I just think we cannot move forward with these major development projects knowing that a good percentage of the residents aren't aware of it. Thank you, Mr. Lee.
The community-led design process identified a number of priorities, including gathering spaces, concessions, economic opportunities, natural areas, historic resources, sea level rise resilience, and water conservation. The resulting design is inspired addressing all of these wants and needs and comprised of 6 zones: the neighborhood edge, the historic Shorewalk, the Marineway, the Sage Slopes, the Marsh Edge, and the Boatyard. The park design also includes a significant segment of the Bay Trail. India Basin's steep banks and corridor-like street system close India Basin off and discourage walking between the shoreline and the public housing on the surrounding hills. The neighborhood edge creates vital connections between the hills and the water and activates the street edge. The historic Shorewalk uses native drought-tolerant plantings and follows the original 1938 pre-filled shoreline. It will be lined with benches, picnic tables, barbecues, and as a nod to many neighbors' southern roots, porch swings. The Marineway will accommodate casual recreational activities and events and terminates in a gravel beach from where park users can play in the water and launch kayaks, canoes, and paddleboards, which will also be available for rent. The Marineway also features a 600-foot-long pier with an ADA-accessible dock and boat launch. The dock will also serve as an outdoor classroom for area youth and a place for birdwatching. Along the Bay Trail, as it traverses the Marineway, visitors can stop at the Shipwreck Overlook Deck, whose dimensions mirror the Bay City shipwreck buried below and from which one can gaze at the ship's visible remains. On either side of the Marineway are the sage slopes and the marsh edge. Nestled within the sage slopes are native plantings, a large adventure play area, adult fitness stations, a quarter-mile recreational loop, skate trails, basketball courts, walking trails, and smaller hiking trails for marsh life observation. The sage slopes transition to a restored marsh edge that replaces the hard riprap edge along the existing park to create a soft vegetated buffer, providing habitat and which will both protect the park from sea level rise and storm surges, as well as allowing the park to adapt to sea level rise. At the center of the India Basin shoreline is the Scow Schooner Boatyard, where visitors are welcomed to the park by the Shipwrights Cottage, a San Francisco City landmark, which will be used as a welcome and education center and which will have a casual cafe on the lower level looking out at the water. An overlook pavilion will provide space for Bayview Hunters Point-based food vendors to operate, providing economic opportunities and concessions to a neighborhood lacking access to fresh, healthy food options. Between the Shipwrights Cottage and the Overlook Pavilion, there we go. The ADA accessible entry garden path will bring visitors into the boatyard as well as to a landing where the Class 1 bikeway and the Bay Trail converge and connect to the adjacent parks. The boatyard's former paint shop will be repurposed and will offer maker and other life skills classes for area youth. And lastly, it's very important to note that portions of the 900 Innis site constitute the India Basin Scow Schooner Boatyard cultural landscape. We've taken the site's history very seriously, and the concept design retains over 75% of the significant contributing features of the cultural landscape. The project will be developed in phases. Phase 1A is the full cleanup of the site. The activities associated with the site's history as a boat building and repair facility for over 120 years have left the property a brownfield, which must be cleaned of contaminants such as metals, PCBs, lead, and asbestos before it can be developed into a park. Phase 1B includes the construction of the boatyard, the bike path, and the Bay Trail connection. Phase 2 includes the remainder of the work at the existing India Basin Shoreline Park. We have raised and contributed almost $15 million for the site acquisition, planning and design, remediation and site preparation, and interim activation of the park project. We have another $9 million in funding pending. We'll submit our permit application for site remediation by December 2018, bringing our estimated remediation start date to early 2020. And as part of the remediation effort, we intend to collaborate with Hunters Point family, who, through an EPA Brownfield Cleanup Grant, has already trained approximately 60 Bayview Hunters Point residents in environmental remediation. And with that, that concludes my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, supervisors. I'm Courtney Pash, Build Senior Project Manager for our India Basin project. Can I, There we go. I'm going to give you a quick overview of the project design and project components. As you can see, the project site is mostly vacant with one improved cul-de-sac and 3 paper streets that the project intends to vacate, reconfigure, build, and dedicate back to the city. The site was mostly bay-fill that was placed here in the 50s and 60s and has since then been the subject of numerous regional, local, private, and community-led planning efforts. The most recent and notable is the India Basin Shoreline Community Vision that was created by existing residents of the area. Build used that plan as a starting point for our design. Plus, over the last 4 years, we have met with numerous community groups and stakeholders in India Basin and the Bayview to craft and refine this plan. We've held over 150 workshops, events, stakeholder meetings, small working groups. We have also met with the tenant associations and HOAs of all the surrounding public and private housing developments. The current zoning on the site is 40-foot height limit, NC2 and M1, which we are proposing to rezone, bring the density towards Innis, and create 11 acres of publicly accessible open space along the shoreline. Thank you. We looked at the site comprehensively, taking into consideration the surrounding community and proposed new park system currently underway along the southeastern shoreline. As Nicole mentioned, one of our first undertakings was to work with the RPD and the task force to create the India Basin Waterfront Parks and Trails Plan to ensure all 8 parks along this 1.5-mile shoreline band would be designed and developed comprehensively. Now to reiterate our programming, we intend to build 1,575 new housing units, approximately 25% affordable, approximately 200,000 square feet of neighborhood-serving retail, small office, community space, and a child care facility. This program allows us to dedicate a new 5-acre park to the city, which combined with the rehabilitated India Basin open space will result in a new 11-acre park for the neighborhood, plus approximately 3 acres of public open space within the development. This will be supported by approximately 1,800 parking spaces, including over 200 public spaces for park users. In order to accommodate all of these improvements, we concentrated development towards Innis Avenue and have 2 14-story buildings tapering down to 1, 2, and 3-story buildings at the water's edge. The intensity of use is also concentrated along Innis, with the primary retail corridor planned for New Hudson Avenue. We have a diverse pedestrian network traversing the site. They range from created footpaths to the more structured Bay Trail, linking the site to the neighboring 900 Innis and 5 Points Northside Park. We have a robust bike network, including Class 1 separated commuter bike path along New Hudson. We really tried to focus on sustainability. I don't have time to go into all the details here, but a site generally includes centralized stormwater treatment, a black water treatment plant to provide water for irrigation, net zero public realm, and coastal adaptation strategies to accommodate sea level rise and changing habitats. Now I'm going to quickly walk you through different areas on the site. You can see them in site view here. I'm going to focus on the park assets, the Big Green and the India Basin Shoreline Park. First is starting with at the main gateway to our project at Aurelius Walker and Innis Avenue. There will be a transit stop here for the Hunters Point Express heading downtown, as well as bike share and other transportation amenities. And now to view into the park through the open public market that will house startup, small, temporary, or semi-permanent retail to support the public parks, with a focus on Bayview retail businesses. Here's another view of the public market and how it interfaces with the Big Green. This slide illustrates the Cove Terrace, which is where 900 Innis and 700 Innis merge. This is the pinch point of the site, and we work very closely with RPD to figure out how to address all the grades and accommodate the uses in this area. The 1,800 parking spaces that were referenced earlier are tucked into the hillside in 3 large parking garages flanked by retail and other active ground floor uses, emphasizing the pedestrian focus of this project. This is a rendering of one of the primary public gathering spaces within the project. Again, as you go outward towards the bay, the intensity and density of development decreases, including a shared street loop, providing limited auto access and pedestrian spillover onto the street. At the southeast corner of the site, we are proposing a perch beach with an adjacent kayak launch, providing for an active waterfront and linking this site to the kayak launch proposed at 900 Innis. One of the other unique features of the Big Green is the interface with the private dwelling units. The park will be layered and provide ecological as well as functional amenities to the development through stormwater treatment ponds, which will seasonally fill and provide a unique habitat and visual experience to parkgoers. As discussed, the park will have a diverse trail network, including a multi-use recreation path, the Bay Trail, and the park will be sprinkled with sculptures providing periodic surprises and points of interest. Finally, the shoreline treatment here is unique, and then the site is elevated at 25 feet above sea level and situated in such a way that there is minimal impact from sea level rise. The existing wetlands may be inundated over time, and so we have created a series of terrace wetlands to allow for habitat migration through the years. We have also located all critical infrastructure above the end-of-year 100-year flood projection. Finally, the project will be built in 3 phases, such that with each development phase, we will build a commensurate amount of park space. The first phase is the hillside in the middle of the park. Second phase is the cove and the adjacent parkland. And finally, the flats with the parkland next to that. That concludes my presentation, and I, along with several of our team members, are available for any questions.
Thank you very much. Now, colleague Supervisor Kim. Oh, sorry. Okay. We will go first to Ms. Topier.
Amazing. Good afternoon, Chair Tang and members of the committee. My name is Ann Topier, a project manager with the Office of Economic and Workforce Development, and I am going to provide a brief overview of the public benefits and development agreement for the project. As Supervisor Cohen mentioned, this is one of the projects identified in the Southern Bayfront Strategy, which provides the city with the flexibility to negotiate each project's benefits package to respond to the community's needs and leverage the other project investments in order to provide greater collective value to the residents and neighborhoods. I will quickly walk through the specific benefits agreed to in this DA. As you know, our office focuses on negotiating development agreements that will yield the highest percentage of affordable housing and other community-focused benefits without rendering the project infeasible. We work to identify the appropriate balance within the project's parameters that will work toward relieving the city's housing crisis without creating conditions that would make it impossible for the developer to move forward. We want them to build housing, and we want them to do it quickly. The Affordable Housing Plan has been designed to facilitate development of 25% of all market rate residential units built within the project site. The developer may satisfy this obligation by constructing at least 139 on-site inclusionary units within market rate buildings, conveying up to 3 on-site development parcels at no cost to an affordable housing developer for construction of up to 180 below market rate units, and by paying an in-lieu fee on a maximum of 300 market rate residential units, which could yield up to 75 low-income units off-site. I would like to emphasize that this program caps the number of affordable units that may be built off-site at 75. The remaining 319 below market rate units will be built on the 700 in this project site, and up to 180 of those will likely be built in partnership with 100% affordable housing developers. In recognition of the phased development of the project site, this affordable housing plan requires that certain interim milestones be met prior to issuance of every 250th temporary certificate of occupancy for a residential unit. In addition, the Affordable Housing Plan establishes maximum affordability levels for BMR units and inclusionary units at each of the milestones described. Upon full build-out of the project site, rental units must not exceed, on average, a rate that would be affordable to households earning 110% of AMI, and for sale units must not exceed, on average, a rate that would be affordable to households earning 120% of AMI. The Mayor's Office of Housing has committed to applying all in-lieu fees generated by the project site to affordable housing projects within District 10, and could use these dollars for acquisition of small and large sites for rehabilitation, new 100% affordable construction, or rental stabilization for existing low-income residents. All of the affordable units, both on and off-site, are subject to the city's 40% local preference program to encourage community stability. The next most significant component of this agreement is the commitment to publicly accessible parks and open space. The project proposes a mixed-use development that will include a new network of improved parkland and open space incorporated throughout the urban village. 12 of those acres will be comprised of improvements to the existing 6-acre rec park-owned waterfront open space, as well as nearly 6 acres of private land that will be developed into what is identified as the Big Green. The new park will be dedicated at no cost to the city to become part of the city's southeast waterfront network of public parks. The project sponsor is also committed to providing a services CFD, which will yield $1.5 million annually. This funding will provide enhanced maintenance and operation support to all of the public parks, as well as to other eligible public realm improvements throughout the site. Sorry. The city has reserved the right to draw up to $750,000 from these CFD dollars to use toward job training in the areas of landscaping, horticulture, sustainable infrastructure, and open space management at the project site. Like Pier 70 and Mission Rock, the India Basin project will also be required as part of the Community Benefits Program to create a facility CFD. This first tranche of funds from the site-specific special tax will be available for use by the developer to construct eligible infrastructure and public streets. The second tranche of funds will be used by the city to address area-wide sea level rise needs, shoreline stabilization and protection beyond the borders of the project. Additional community benefits include the construction of an open-air community market and potential grocery store, first source job opportunities for both construction and permanent on-site jobs, local hire requirements for infrastructure work on existing city streets and parks, and an 18% local enterprise business goal. The project will make an approximately $10 million contribution to off-site transportation improvements, as well as construct neighborhood transit, bicycle, and pedestrian network improvements. The project sponsor will deliver a 3,000 square foot warm shell to a certified Bayview child care provider, as well as establish an endowment fund to be used at the sole discretion of the selected child care provider for tenant improvements, rental subsidy, or discounted rates to neighborhood families for the first 8 years of occupancy on the site. Finally, the city reserves an option on 5,000 square feet of commercial space for a possible future community facility use, such as a reading room, library, or other community serving space. This concludes my presentation, and I am available for questions as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Topier. And Supervisor Kim has a question.
I actually have a series of questions. First of all, a couple of things. I'm glad to see that within the development agreement that there will be a public power consideration with SFPUC, as with some of our other major area plans, and of course the commitment to the Child Care Center, which is incredibly important. I have a series of questions both on some labor issues, the TDM program, and the housing program. And I'll just begin with some of my questions in regards to labor. First of all, I know that there is a waiver on requirements on prevailing wage and apprenticeship, similar to what we did with Mission Rock and Pier 70. But my understanding was that in those cases, the developer had entered into a project labor agreement, and I remember strong labor support when those DAs came to Land Use Committee. And I'm just curious what the status is on discussions with labor. And if I have misinformation, please do correct the information that I have.
Supervisor, I could, if you don't.
Supervisor Cohen?
Thank you. I could just touch base with that. Is that it's an ongoing conversation to finalize the details there in terms of what labor harmony would look like on the on this particular project.
Is there a project labor agreement?
Not in place, not signed at this particular time, but like I said earlier, the discussions are actively happening. So from what I've been able to gather through my messages with key labor leaders as well as the project sponsors, that people are on the same page and that the language is still being sussed out.
I'm hearing different things.
Supervisors.
Okay, why don't we, and if you wouldn't mind just stating your name and position on the record.
My name is Lou Vasquez. I'm the chairman of BUILD. We are in negotiations. We actually have an agreement with the carpenters across Northern California. We're in active conversation with the Building Trades Council on a project labor agreement. The horizontal infrastructure work will be prevailing wage. The balance of the project is what is being discussed, and we hope to have an agreement in place soon, but I can't tell you when.
Yes, so I am aware that for the horizontal infrastructure, that prevailing wage will be in place, but I think that there has to be a commitment for the vertical development as well. I'm a little concerned about supporting a project that doesn't have labor on board yet. In the case of Mission Rock and Pier 70, at least in my memory, although I've been here for 8 years, so my memory can be hazy, I remember all of that being worked out before it even came to Land Use Committee. So I don't want to support something without knowing that there's a hard written commitment to prevailing wage and to the concerns of labor and our workers. I'm going to guess that we have to take this at public comment, but I'm going to leave it to the discretion of the chair.
Yes, if we can speak to this during public comment, I think that would be more helpful, just so that we can get through all the presentations. Well, I think we'll get there shortly. I also just want to suggest, because this is something that has come through the Central SOMA plan, through the Labor Council, is that there be a good jobs employment plan. So it's great that we often have an agreement on the temporary jobs, which is the construction jobs on site, but we also need a plan for the permanent jobs, which really are for the life of the project with the small business. I know I saw the local source for a certain percentage of the jobs, but for large development projects in Central SOMA, we are going to be requiring developers to come up with a permanent job program that talks about local hire, as well as how they plan to hire individuals with barriers to employment, whether they have convictions on their records or are formerly homeless. I think in particular, because this development is in District 10, I would encourage something similar to that. My second series of questions are in regards to the TDM plan. And so I was looking for this in the DA. I couldn't find it. What percentage of the plan or the measures are they committed to? And I wasn't sure if this was pre-June 2018 or post.
Good afternoon, Carly Payne from SFMTA. So just to confirm that I understand the question, is it what proportion of the measures that are in their transportation plan have they committed to?
Well, the ordinance,
Okay,
the
I
Transportation
understand your
Demand Management Ordinance grandfathered in projects before June of 2018 to only comply with, I think, 50% of the TDM requirements. Any projects that come after have to do 100%.
I understand your question now. Sorry. So the Transportation Demand Management Ordinance also said that development agreement projects may meet the policy goals of a Transportation Demand Management Ordinance in ways kind of outside of the particular point program. And so this project is meeting the goals by committing to a reduction or in total driving trips by 20% compared to what the environmental analysis said would be estimated from this project. And this is in line with what we saw from in Mission Rock and in Pier 70 as well. And so the project is committing to a performance goal. So in the transportation exhibit of the development agreement, there is a transportation plan which includes within it their transportation demand management plan, including all of the various measures that the project anticipates putting into place or is committing to at this point to putting into place to achieve that essentially auto trip cap. But it also says we are committing to that performance measure of not having more than a certain number of daily driving trips. And so if these measures are not doing well enough, because they're going to be monitoring and reporting to the city, they will go back and revise their plan to do better. And so it's a commitment to having a lower rate of driving trips than otherwise would be expected.
Okay, so being that in some ways we're comparing apples to oranges, would you say that the TDM program that's part of the DA will be meeting roughly 50% of what the ordinance requires currently?
Because the commitment is to a driving reduction, I think it's meeting the full spirit of the ordinance in terms of because the project is so large and there are so many buildings and units and total parking spaces. The TDM ordinance basically says you're pegging your total number of points off of how many, based on how many parking spaces, and it's really not designed for a project of this scale. So they would not be meeting their points target if you did it strictly at 100% compared to the menu. But instead of that, they're giving a commitment to this performance measure, which I think, in my professional ability, is on par with what we're expecting from projects kind of across the board that are large
So
in
what
the
is,
TDM
what is the
standards.
goal that the project sponsor is committed to?
So it's a 20% reduction in daily driving trips compared to what their environmental analysis showed.
My next series of questions then are on the housing component. Again, I scoured through the DA and I couldn't find any committed percentages of average median income within the 25%. And perhaps I missed it. It's a dense development agreement, but I've never had a DA come to this board in my district without committed levels of AMI. Are we talking about 25% at 120% of AMI, at 0% of AMI? That is a huge difference in subsidy, and this could potentially be a massive giveaway to developer, to the project sponsor, if those percentages are not committed to.
So we committed to an average across the site of 110% for rental and 120% for ownership. The
That's very
expectation is that that at least 180 of those units will be in partnership with a affordable housing provider, which would be at 55% for rental and 80% or to 90% for ownership. We also expect that all of the in-lieu fees that would be paid out would be to low-income housing as well. And so the percentage is actually...
Is that actually written out? Because I didn't see that in the in-lieu requirement. Is that specified in the DA that any in-lieu fee out or any fee out would go towards low-income housing?
No.
And at what percentages?
No,
I
we
didn't
didn't-
see
we didn't
that.
commit
so
to
I don't
50
think that you can state something if it isn't committed to.
No, because all of them are options, so we don't actually commit them to. They have all three of those abilities to solve their affordable housing obligation. They can pull any of those levers. We just cap the number that they can fee out on, and we also cap the number of units that they can, or the number of parcels that they can dedicate on site to a maximum of 180 units on those parcels. And the expectation is that 2 of those parcels would be ownership at 50 units, and the third parcel would be a rental, 100% affordable rental property at 130 units.
And what is the percentage of 2 and 3 bedroom units required in the affordable and in the market rate?
It's the percentage, I'm sorry, the percentage of the number of units?
2 and 3 bedroom units committed both on market rate and affordable units.
Is it 25% 2-bedroom and? I'm sorry, what?
I couldn't
I
find
can't-
this in the DA as well.
I can't remember the number, the number of 2 and 3 bedrooms. Okay, it's about 35% of the units are 2 and 3 bedroom.
In the affordable and the market rate?
They'll have to match.
Okay, about 35%.
Yeah, I think
Will you
we're,
give me an accurate
right
number?
now there's about 10% 3 and 25% 2.
Okay, great. If we can confirm, that would be great. I feel very uncomfortable with this very flexible open menu of affordable housing. I do think the percentage is quite high, to be honest, particularly given the district that this development is going into and the AMI percentages in this neighborhood, not meeting 110% at rental homeownership. I understand a higher AMI. I'm very concerned about the fact that that there's an in-lieu option when they've only committed to 25%. The goal is always that if you fee out, you have to do 33%. And the way I calculate it, it looks like at base, the project sponsor is only committed at minimum to do 20% on site, which means that the remaining 5% if it's feed out, should be higher off-site. And while while the requirement is no more than 75 units off-site, and this is my very rough math, obviously this is not my area of expertise, I mean it should be no less than 110 units off-site, and we should have a mandate on what levels of AMI those off-site units are. I've always supported off-site, but when we do off-site, they have to be deeply subsidized. With the Giants and Seawall Lot 337, where they committed to 40% on-site affordable and middle income, they were higher ranges of average median income rentals throughout. With 5M, which was not on public land, and this is a mix of public and private land, they committed to 40% on and off-site, but their off-site commitments were deeply subsidized for formerly homeless, both Eddy and Taylor and the senior housing. And then on-site, they were actually quite high, average median incomes, up to 150%. I just think that without having a detailed understanding of what the developer is committing to, it's not clear to me whether we're getting a good end of our bargain on this deal, especially if a portion of the 29.26 acres of parcels are publicly owned as well. We should always have a higher expectation. And I understand that there isn't an office development as part of this development agreement as there was on Seawall Lot 337, and so they don't have a jobs housing linkage fee to plow back into the land. I'm just not sure I'm satisfied with this current agreement on site.
I just want to clarify one point. None of the land is currently public land except for the park space.
Okay.
So all of the land that is being built on is privately owned
Okay.
land being privately funded.
Okay, so that's actually really important to understand. I was just looking at the language here, and so it's a little confusing because it says 29.26 acres are privately and publicly owned parcels.
So the parks land, the edge of the property is existing rec park open space.
Well, that's separate. So Rec and Park owns 8.9 acres of publicly owned parcels along the shoreline where they are building the new publicly accessible network of improved parkland that you've talked about. It says that Build would redevelop approximately 29.26 acres of privately and publicly owned parcels.
So
and maybe I just need to better understand how that's broken apart. And if it's just parks on their portion of the publicly owned parcels, that's fine.
They will be
And
building parks on their
Okay.
land and dedicating it to the city at no cost.
Okay, great.
Supervisor Ken Rich with OEWD. Since you're bringing up some housing issues, which I think are global and maybe like going to extend a little bit beyond this project, I was just going to say a couple words about our thinking in terms of getting to the housing package. And you'll see, I think, similar thinking coming to some of the future projects coming towards you. As you know, we're getting into the next several projects we're going to be bringing to you are going to be mostly private, some with some office to contribute the jobs housing linkage fees, but some like this one not. And so we are having to be a little more conservative with our asks. And we did, as we always do on these projects, run numbers on the project and look at the project pro forma. And where we are with this project is at about a 5.2% return on cost. What our experts tell us is that at 5.5 and above, you will get capital to build the project, and below 5, you will probably not get capital to build the project. So we're in a little gray danger zone. And so we are aware that Section 415 asks for fee out to be at 33%. The reason we didn't go that high is very simple, because it probably wouldn't be affordable to the developer. And so we had this dilemma where we said, well, it'll add about $5 million to the total cost to go from 25 to 33 with that 75 unit cap. And so because we wanted some funding released into the community for ACT rehab and other things, and because we wanted the opportunity for the developer to do a little bit of ownership housing, which is what they'd fee out of, we made the call, and it's certainly ultimately your call as a decision maker, to stay at 25 because we think it will produce that revenue. If we go to 33, I think the project would not produce any fee out revenue, and that would be a perfectly good outcome. I'm not arguing that that would be unsustainable or a catastrophe, but we were trying to get a little bit of that revenue. So that's the thinking.
Suggesting, by the way, so I understand that. I wasn't suggesting we go to 33% offsite or 25% onsite, but what essentially the base minimum that the project sponsor is committed to is 20% onsite. What I'm suggesting is that the remaining 5% be at the 33% level. Does that make sense? So roughly 6.5%. I'm, again, my math is not spot on. But what I'm saying is, okay, fine, we'll do the 20% on site. I'd still like to have an understanding of the AMI. I think 110% average on rental is high, so I'm curious what the range is. But what I'm saying is that, so keep the 20% on site, but the off-site should move from 75 units to 110 units, roughly 110 units. So
Right.
that remaining 5% is really 6 or 7%.
I
Does
think
that make sense?
forgive me if I don't understand you. I think I do understand that. I think that movement to make the 75 unit go to 110, and you're multiplying each of those by the fee, which is still being discussed, but 200 and something $1,000 per unit. Am I not getting it? My point is that adds
think the
that
offsite should
additional
be-
cost.
Yeah, the offsite should be at the 33% level, and if only 5% is offsite,
Right.
it should somehow match.
Okay, understood.
And again, to understand, by the way, I support ACT rehab and small site acquisition. I understand how important that is, and I'm sure there are many needs in District 10. So I'm not suggesting that it has to be 25% on site. I'm sure actually community members want to see some of it feed out, particularly for the home ownership units. But I think it should be slightly higher, and I do think that there should be a commitment on the AMI levels, even if it's just a cap, right? The highest that those offsite units would be offered for. And I guess with the range at 110% for rentals and 120% for home ownership, I'm curious what the prospective range would be.
I'm sorry, the what range?
The range of the affordable housing units. So if they only have to meet an average of 110% rental, how high can they go for rentals and home ownership?
It's
Right, so it's 20% below market rate in the area, and so my understanding is for this neighborhood, that's 140 would be the maximum
For rentals and home ownership?
for rental, and is it 150 for, or is it? Oh, I believe it's 140 for rental, 150 for home ownership, and then so that would be the cap. They couldn't go above that.
That is very high.
part of the thinking on this, Supervisor, is simply that these projects are usually where we can get our more moderate and middle income housing. As we're doing around the city, we are really good at producing low income and still struggling with the moderate and middle for a variety of reasons that I think you're aware of. So we are, frankly, and again, subject to the board's ultimate decision on this, proposing on some of these DA projects to take it a little bit higher.
I understand the need for middle income, and I definitely would like middle income units on this project. It feels like a very high average, and just given the AMI levels in the Bayview neighborhood, doesn't seem like even if you have a 40% local preference, that many of the residents are going to be eligible. Local residents are going to be eligible for this housing.
Yeah, understood.
Okay, I'd like to, keep having that discussion over the next 24 hours if the plan is still to vote on this tomorrow.
Okay, thank you, Supervisor Kim. I don't know if colleagues have any other comments or questions, though. Supervisor Cohen?
Thank you. I did. I wanted just to pose a question to Supervisor Kim. Supervisor, what's your understanding about the average AMI in the Bayview? It sounds like you're working at what number already in your mind.
Actually, you're correct. I don't know the average AMI in the Bayview, and I'd like to get that information. Based on the numbers that I saw during our inclusionary housing ordinance discussion in 2017, they were not this high. In fact, the levels that I saw were far below 55% of average median income. Again, it'd be good to have that data so I understand how that average was selected.
I have no other questions.
Okay, thank you. All right, so at this point, I don't see any other questions or comments, and so we'll go to public comment on these items.
All right, I want all of you to listen real carefully. This is an example of your price fixing. And about this developer, you got a developer that's in it for profit. You need to get a developer that's part of a non-profit construction development organization by means of going to the federal government. in order to get a construction company that's not price fixing like this. SF viewer, please. You sit up there and tell on yourself, and you say that the median income in the Bayview is about 140%. That's $119,000 a year. You deliberately go to areas in the Bayview of people who are in that income bracket and don't include the people who live in the same area who are in lower income brackets that are on Social Security benefits, retirement benefits, and by the same response, you fail to exclude people in income brackets who are below this range, this target that you are price fixing at. We have an emergency housing homeless situation on our hands, and what you're doing is criminal. Then you sit up there and complain, sit up there and demonstrate that you're starting about 40% of the median. You said that about Mission Rock, but you have a low-income female Hispanic be your pitch person, and the lowest income to apply at Mission Rock is $32,000 a year, and 40% of that affordable housing was only 2% of that 40% pie. So that means the income brackets at 35, 30, 25, and 25% of the median is not included in the housing opportunity. And those are the plaintiffs that I'm talking about that I'm going to fire off a class action suit against you pertaining to housing discrimination. Now you got the Giants caught up in it because they're financing it. They'll be the first professional baseball team with a multi-million-dollar housing discrimination lawsuit on their hands, and you're doing the same goddamn thing in the Bayview. Now, what you got to say about that?
Ace Washington. I was coming up here to speak, but as you've seen, one of the sheriffs asked me to go out because District 5 told them they didn't want me in their business. If I go in there, they're going to remove me from City Hall. That's why I call it Silly Hall, y'all. 'Cause I'm trying to tell y'all what goes on in these walls here, y'all. And about this contracted bills, I got some problems with you, what you did in the Fillmore. You built some buildings there. We couldn't get nobody working in there. And I knew y'all was going to have to come back around again, just like all you conniving developers in the city and county by the bay. Let me just say one thing, doggone it, because I'm pissed off right now. Because when I leave here, I'm going up to the sheriff's office to find out why in the hell I can't go in my own District 5 office. And y'all may not know it, I've been banned from going to the mayor's office. Am I that kind of a character, or is it too much that I'm too much for you? One thing is for sure, I got 1 minute. There's a new organization, developer build, and all the rest of them that we're going to pull out. It's called CASE, Community Assistance Service Enterprise. Let me tell you why. You got these developers and everybody got a big team of 10 or 12 people to answering questions, but you have nobody work on the community side. We have no consultants, no liaisons. That is simply unacceptable here in the city by the bay in 2018. Let me tell you what it means right here. We call Silly Hall. Right now, I ain't pissed off at y'all. I'm finna go up to the sheriff's office to try to find out why in the hell I can't go in District 5. And for the brother that's using that language, you can't stop him because they do it in the White House. So that's why I call this Silly Hall. I'm gonna tell the story about here. You used to get called off for saying the S word or something, but you can say what you want in public testimony now. But I'm finna go up here to the sheriff's office to find out what the hell's going on, that Ace can't go in District 5 to try to find out about the corruption in District 5. I'm appalled, and that ain't all. I'm just pissed right now at the city council.
Good afternoon, supervisors. Thank you for the very, I think, in-depth questions about affordable housing. My name is Fernando Martí with the Council of Community Housing Organizations. So 25%. I remember being in a room with Ken Rich and with Supervisor Kim and others when we worked out Prop K, the goal of the city and county of San Francisco to make housing going forward 33% low and moderate income up to 50% for middle income. And here we are at 25%. There's a few questions that were raised earlier, and I heard answers that I couldn't find the answers in the DA that was presented in your package. So perhaps there could be some clarification on there. The DA, I think, very explicitly says up to 3 sites maximum of affordable housing on site. I heard that at least 180 units would be built on site. I couldn't find that anywhere on the DA. Apparently, my reading, it seems like there is absolutely no obligation to provide a site within this development that will provide 100% affordable housing. There is no money dedicated, and that's understandable. I think that's how a lot of these deals are. You provide the site, but there's actually no guarantee that that housing will be there. It might be there, maybe I couldn't find it. The 110% AMI average is a very interesting number. So let's say that there was a site for low-income housing at 55% AMI. Let's say that occupied half of the units. That would mean the other half of the units could be at 170% AMI with absolutely no range in between. And looking at Supervisor Safai, we've had this conversation a lot about different income levels. Where are teachers? Teachers earn between 70 and 90% AMI. There's a real possibility that there'd be no housing on this for somebody who earns what a teacher earns. One of the things that I think was very important was creating a range of incomes. And I want to see that here. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, respectful supervisors. My name is Michael Brodsky. I'm the founder of Archimedes Banya, and I'm owner of one of the residential units in 748 Ines Avenue building. Archimedes Banya became a destination in San Francisco, and it serves 60,000 visitors during a year now. It exists for around 7 years, and it's totally ignored by this project. Tomorrow we have appeal hearing in regards of that, so I'm not going to discuss this issue at this moment. It's a little bit strange that this meeting is before the appeal. So at this moment, I want to discuss only the use of land, because it's a land use committee. So the main part of 700 Avenue property was originally zoned as M1, light industrial, for many reasons, which should be respected. It is going to be converted to high-density residential. So why it is light industrial? Number one, it's not compacted landfill, which was created from the residuals of construction of Hunters Point and Portero Hill. It is not 280 freeway, as it's claimed by the developers. And in my documents, I have reference for everything. So the soil is contaminated with petroleum hydrocarbon and heavy metals, lead and chromium. This is totally ignored by planning department and everybody else. I have all documents. Now, I would like to show what happens with copper pipes when they're in this soil. You can see the holes there. So this is rotten land. And when people want to eat, and the city needs housing, it does mean you eat rotten meat. You still need to think. You kill these children which are going to be there. I would like to present my documents. I don't know to where, to whom. Just leave it here. Just leave it here, okay? I'll put it here. Thank you.
Dear supervisors, my name is James Fahey. I'm a Bayview resident. I've been one for 12 years. I oppose the development as it now stands. I remind you, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, as the saying goes. I would like to make 3 points. First, there was no attempt whatsoever to reach out to 400,000 people, 60,000 people a year for 5 years, actually 7 years, who have enjoyed the environment of Archimedes Banya. There was no attempt to reach out to any of those people whatsoever. There was no input taken from the people who live on the hill behind the proposed project. This is a major flaw in the design methodology. This is a horrible precedent. Second, I'm okay with the development as per zoning, which limits development to 4 stories industrial. I would actually prefer a park there. There are already huge developments going on around the corner. This is too much growth too soon in the neighborhood. You're about to double the population of Bayview already. Housing growth advocates should be quite satisfied with that for now. I remind you that radioactive, yes, radioactive material has still been found next door. Third, the towers at the Candlestick development are okay. They should not be used, however, as precedent to justify these towers. The Candlestick towers are completely new in a completely new neighborhood. They do not involve changing a currently built neighborhood and community. The project is different. So in summary, please reject for those three reasons.
Good afternoon. My name is Abhishek. I am a general manager of Archimedes Bonnier. I have been working there for 5 years. Even I was involved when we were doing constructions. I go there every day. You know, I smell the sewer at exactly 10:30 in the morning. We started this business with 10 people. I've lost my blood and sweat over it. It took me 6 years to get from 10 people to 90 people. And with this project, these big guys, they started with one word, and now everything is changed, including the height, the zoning, the density, and everything. So I don't even know what's going to come up next. All I have to say is, I have 90 staffs, mostly from the neighborhood, and the building that's going on behind us, it's going to kill our business. It's not just going to kill our business, but the employment as well. Just a moment ago, you have to ask them a lot of questions, and they were looking at each other, had no answers to give. So when you guys are asking them questions, they have no answers. Small folks like us, who doesn't have billions or millions of dollars, we have just been crushed like ants over here. So do something about us. Protect the business that's been there for so many years. 90 staffs, mostly from the neighborhood. That's about it. And I hope you look onto this. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Supervisors, Tim Paulson. I'm the Secretary-Treasurer of the San Francisco Building and Construction Trades Council. And as you all know, the Building and Construction Trades Council has had a relationship with every developer up and down that coast, public or private, starting with the Bayview, Hunters Point area, where we have a project labor agreement that people are working under. We have an agreement with Forest City at Pier 70. We have a great arrangement with the San Francisco Warriors, who are building their arena and the work that's going on out there, as well as with the Mission Rock, all things that have been referenced in some regard today, all inked copies of stuff. I do want to say that we have entered into negotiations with Build Inc. We are working very collaboratively. I want to tell you, I don't want to say that there's any animosity or anything going on. We are exchanging. I just received another counter proposal as I was sitting here waiting to speak. So the negotiations are going well, but they are not done and they are not inked. And so therefore, on behalf of the affiliates of the Labor Council, I cannot officially sit down and say we support this. I think we're going to get to where we have to do, but as of right now, our official position is that we're trying to get this relationship put together as we move forward. My instinct, besides the fact that the negotiations are going so well, is to ask for a continuance, and I think that's what my affiliates would want me to say, but we are doing some intense negotiations as we speak, and so I just wanted to put that all in context to where we are.
Thank you, Mr. Paulson. Supervisor Kim has a question for you.
I think you actually just answered it, which is what is the request of the Building Trades Council. I feel very uncomfortable putting something out without something in writing, and something I've always learned through many years of negotiation is that you haven't gotten it till you got it. And this is often the best time to be negotiating these agreements on behalf of our workers. So I wanted to ask what the Building Trades official position was on whether we support this project out of, there's a CEQA appeal, but whether we forward this project out of committee today.
Well, I think it's actually pretty simple, just because we have been negotiating even over the weekend, and we actually thought that we were going to get to a place where we would have what is known as a letter of intent. This is not the project labor agreement itself. That'll be negotiated over the next course of time as to, once everything gets penciled out with Build Inc. and the planning department and everything else that's the piece, but it is not a deal that we have yet, and it's not inked. And so we don't have an official position, but I know that if I went up here and said I support the project, and boy, I sure hope we absolutely go running forward right now, I'd get my ass kicked by some of the union affiliates that are around. So I'm just putting this into context. I hope we get there, but you're right. It's not done until it's done. Thanks for that question. And the bulk of my comments are going to be based on your question earlier.
Thank you, Mr. Paulson. Thank you. Next speaker, please.
My name is Kathy Perry, and I am a Bayview Hunters Point resident. I'm also a San Francisco native. I've been active for many decades, and lately not as active as I used to be, only because I'm older now, I'm a grandmother taking care of my kids, my grandchildren, in support of their parents. I want to remind you that this is a private land and private funding, and while I appreciate the city's interest, keen interest in it, there are some benefits that the city gets, and so do we as residents. Remember, Bayview Hunters Point resident. The park line, the shoreline, the beach, new taxpayers moving into the community, bringing in more resources and revenues. These are positive and wonderful benefits for the city. I like the most favorite thing that I have about it is the 394 affordable units. I realize that the details have not been worked out. I like that the developer has been given 3 options. I also like that through these meetings, which are documented and recorded, that you have a record of what people intend to do. So you already have something in the form of a record, even though you don't have an actual signed and inked agreement, but you have testimony. There are trusted community partners that I believe in. APRI is one of them that is working with them. And so I'm saying that and bringing that up because you have to hold, and I know that you will, everybody accountable, just like you asked the member of the city department, how did the notice get out? Well, everybody has to do their part. The builders have to do their part, the departments have to do their part, the community has to do their part. They also work with really small African-American subcontractors, which I appreciate. And this is before they were even applying for this particular project. So I support the project, I support APRI, and just hold everybody, including myself, accountable for this project as it goes through. Thank you.
Good afternoon, supervisors. My name is Janice Hunter, and I represent Green Action for Health and Environmental Justice, including our many members who are residents of Bayview Hunters Point. Green Action respectfully calls on the Board of Supervisors to reject Build LLC's project as it will result in irreparable harm to the people, community, and environment of Bayview Hunters Point. Bill's project will gentrify the community, contributing to the displacement of longtime people of color from Bayview Hunters Point. Bill's project along the shoreline is directly at risk from rising sea levels due to climate change, and the city used outdated projections that underestimated the risk. Bill's project is on toxic land. Testing has not been completed, and they refuse to test for radiation even though they are next to the shipyard's Superfund site. But most importantly, the city's own EIR concluded that Build's development project will result in significant, unhealthy, and likely illegal levels of air pollution during both construction and operations that would be unavoidable and cannot be mitigated. We ask you, the members of the Board of Supervisors, are you going to vote to add significant and unhealthy levels of air pollution, likely above the quality standards, to the already suffering community of Bayview Hunters Point? The Bay Area Quality Management District and the state of California's CalEnviroscreen have both found that Bayview Hunters Point residents are highly vulnerable and at risk to pollution. The last thing residents need is more pollution. If you vote for this project, you're voting to harm the health of Bayview Hunters Point residents who already suffer from too much pollution. Please reject Build LLC project and protect people, not corporations. Thank you very much.
I agree with everything she say. Yeah, they got some good numbers. They have a whole lot of numbers, but how many certificate numbers do they have on, on actually real people with real low income, people that have been living in Bayview Hunters Point all their life, all of a sudden getting pushed out. How about our toxic area? It's already at a level where we can't stand no more. People dying up there on top of that hill. It's about lives first. I just come here to express truly that I've been in Bayville since 1966, and I saw a lot of people die from cancer and stuff like that because we used to play in the shipyard when I was a kid. We used to climb over the fence and all that type of stuff. But then, 30, 40 years later, you're seeing people passing away at a high rate because it don't get you up real quick. It takes years to come. And then when it comes, everybody that's affected start dying. So I done seen my mother pass away and a lot of other people. Twin brother pass away. My oldest brother passed away. I saw a lot of deaths, But it's about affordability. Can we actually afford to live in this neighborhood when they rebuild? No. How is our health going to be when they rebuild? It's already stringent. It's already a high rate of asthma, cancer, and all this other stuff. You have to take in proportion the cumulative impact that it's going to have on the community. All these people with these 214 buildings, sky-high buildings, all these cars and stuff, that's bringing more pollution into our air. Thank you.
Hello, supervisors. My name is Michelle Pierce, Bayview Hunters Point Community Advocates. I had several things that I wanted to bring up in this meeting and still need to be addressed. I will save them until tomorrow's hearing because I want to commend Supervisor Kim for all of her questions. My biggest issue with this project is that the plan and the EIR are half complete. How can we go forward on things that have not been addressed yet that are the most critical aspects of this project? There is no doubt that we in Bayview Hunters Point need housing. There is no doubt that we in Bayview Hunters Point need green spaces, healthy spaces. The problem is this plan leaves so much out that we don't know what we're going to get, and our assumption when things are left in the hands of the corporation is that we, the Black community in San Francisco, end up suffering. I'm not just speaking for the Black community in San Francisco at this point. Our neighborhood since 2016, as of 2016, is 42% Asian and 38% Latino. We, the poor people of color in San Francisco, need some guarantees. We have already been shuttled all over this city. We need to know what the housing mix is going to look like. We need that cemented. We need to know what the soil quality is going to be in the end. We need that cemented now. We don't need, when we get to it 5 years from now, we will decide, because that's no guarantee. And it really gives away our agency and your agency in controlling a process that is so critical to this neighborhood. I want to close with a quote from Miss Marie Harrison, who can't be here today because her lungs are 60% scarred. Basically, her message to Bill is that she is outraged that they place a kayaking launch above the health and safety of the residents that are going to be there.
Okay. Thank you very much. Next speaker, please.
Good afternoon. My name is Jeff Welch. I'm a resident of North Beach. I'm also a pile driver Local 34. I'm here today to voice my support for this project. I'm all for it. There's over 2 million square feet of new construction, and it's going to provide local and future jobs in the area. I'm also glad this local project because I'll have the opportunity to work close to home. I don't have to travel. Well, not that far. And less travel, the better for me. I've been doing it for 32 years. It's going to provide jobs at completion, 1,500 units of housing opportunity for San Francisco residents. With San Francisco having a housing shortage, this project contributes to the solution and not the problem. So think about it, and please act today, and let's move forward with the India Basin project. Thank you.
Next speaker, please.
Hi, my name is Francisco Benitez. I'm a member of Local 22 in San Francisco. I'm standing in front of you today to show support for this project. As a carpenter apprentice, this project will give me an opportunity towards getting a good paying job and hands-on experience that's necessary for my profession. I'm happy to hear that the construction of this project is estimated to provide about 5,300 jobs throughout the building period alone. Also, in addition to that, there's going to be 800 permanent jobs left behind in this community. When this project is complete, there's going to be more than 1,500 housing units available, which is a great opportunity for the city. I'm just asking you guys to act today and move forward with the India Basin project. Thank you.
Supervisors, thank you for allowing me to speak today. My name is Jacob Adiardi, lead field representative for the Carpenters Union, representing approximately 38,000 men and women here in Northern California, many of which live in the city and county of San Francisco and want to have an opportunity to work on this exceptional development. The Carpenters Union are in full support of this project, the India Basin project, and the development team at Build Inc. The team at Build have done an extensive amount of outreach to the community, to the labor, including the Carpenters Union, and this project is a reflection of that extensive amount of outreach. And to Jane Kim's comment on a labor agreement, there absolutely is a labor agreement in place with Build Inc. in the city and county of San Francisco, including the other 45 counties within Northern California, to make sure that they're using a union general contractor on all projects. By making that commitment to use a union general contractor, they're making more than just a commitment to labor. They're making a commitment to labor standards, wage standards, safety standards, and apprenticeship standards. A project like India Basin will create an opportunity for folks, minorities, women, individuals who are formerly incarcerated, veterans, to step into a career, not just a job, a career, to provide for their families, to give back to the community, and continue to live in the city and county of San Francisco. Not to mention the 1,500 units of housing that this is going to create to the already entitled housing units in the city of San Francisco that we need, again, that we need in the city and county of San Francisco to ensure that individuals who are currently living here have housing, and those that are looking to make San Francisco their home have that opportunity to look at. I'll end with this. There are plenty of developments within the city and county of San Francisco that will remain fallow. Let's make sure that this is not one of them by moving it forward. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Supervisors. Corey Smith on behalf of the San Francisco Housing Action Coalition. Apologize for a tire. I misread an agenda this morning somehow. Certainly speaking here in support of the project, the city and the politics of everything really love to talk about percentages and numbers and kind of fly them around. Some hard facts just associated with this project specifically. It's 1,500 homes that I think everybody in the city knows that we need. The total fees that they're going to be paying, and it's still, as we can tell, a little bit unfinalized, but we're talking around $270 million, somewhere in that ballpark. When you break that down over 1,500 units, they're paying about $180,000 per door in fees. We had recently conducted a survey with all of our members, and one of the questions we always ask is, what are construction costs looking like right now? And on average, they were coming back for apartment buildings about $550,000 in hard costs alone. And 70% of our members expected those costs to be going up. So as we continue to see costs rise, it's exactly the comment that Mr. Rich made from OEWD. We are in a very, very sketchy gray area right now. San Francisco Chronicle article recently described how a number of housing projects were not moving forward in San Francisco. And ultimately, people don't live in entitled or approved units. They live in homes we can actually build for people. And when we have a 100% privately financed project that will build homes for people, it seems very, very risky to try to beat around the edges on that, risking nothing gets built at all. And ultimately, whether it's 25, 26, 30, 15, all of those percentages of zero homes result in zero homes. Zero market rate homes, zero subsidized affordable homes for people in the neighborhood. And so we need to be doing everything we can to get them forward. And one last comment, during the Planning Commission hearing, somebody asked me when this process actually started. It came out of a community process that was finalized back in 2003. So we're 15 years into it so far. Let's please keep it going. Thank you.
Good afternoon, supervisors. My name is Jackie Flynn. I'm the executive director of the A. Philip Randolph Institute here in San Francisco, and we were mentioned a little earlier as APRI. What I can testify about is the actual community engagement that we did provide. I came along very soon after the task force was created. We were one of the original task force members on the steering committee for the park prior to the conversations about the development continued on. And even at that point, I saw that community members needed to be more engaged. So we took on the task to go out into the public housing, into some of the most difficult neighborhoods, to engage folks around talking about a park, and not only got them to participate in talking about a park, but then began to talk to them about how that development was going to impact them moving forward. And I also want to make a comment about it isn't just the folks that are homeowners right now, but we really need to think about the next generation that's coming up. And one of the things that we did was ensure that young people participated in many of these workshops and many of these meetings and got to meet many of the developers and the staff so that they could see what is being created for them in their future. Other things that I appreciate during these conversations included having a conversation about climate change impacts and how we prepare for those moving forward, whereas many of those conversations weren't held in the past. And I think that as opposed to just reacting to when stuff happens, we should really prepare for it. And the last thing I want to just acknowledge is that the last speaker was right. Zero houses, where we currently have nothing right now, includes zero income, zero resources, and it's just sort of a blight. I would like to see something done there. Thank you.
Hello, supervisors. My name is Jesus Flores. I was here last week when you tabled the topics to this week, and I hope that you got time to read the letter that I presented to you guys. I would love your undivided attention when I speak, if it's possible. During this whole development, Bill has created this EIR that we're trying to appeal tomorrow, and we should appeal it. The mitigation measures that were addressed for the air quality, the wind speeds, as well as noise and other emissions were not properly stated. Even with mitigation measures, with air quality, you're going to have unavoidable effects to the community that you are involved in. I know as supervisors, you guys have tried to better the lives of your own districts, that you've tried to represent the unprecedented, because many of them don't have a voice. Many of them weren't here today from the community. As it was also stated, the notice of hearing was only presented in English. No updates were given or anything to the source about the project itself. If you are willing to amend these propositions today that you are trying to vote on, you're trying to say that you are okay with endangering the health and lives of those in the community. I don't believe anyone from Bill would want to live in that location because of the soil samples that have been tested on before, because of the air qualities and particle emissions that are going to be causing a higher risk of cancer to those in the community, not just on-site, but off-site as well. You are voted by the people of San Francisco to better the lives for us, not to endanger them, not to make it worse. Just because the city is going to get money for it doesn't mean it's going to be better for everyone else. Housing isn't everything. The health of people is more important here. So I hope you guys take that into consideration. Do not amend these amendments. Thank you.
Good afternoon, supervisors. Alex Landsberg with the San Francisco Electrical Construction Industry. As far as the discussions around labor issues, I'm going to follow Tim Paulson's lead. He's been negotiating on our behalf to try to get a good labor agreement to make sure that we can put the promises that are contained in this development agreement into actual practice. Specifically on the question of development agreements, this is less about this one per se and more about development agreements in general, which you are going to be seeing, starting with this one, but down the line. As the DA says right off the bat, the development agreement is an opportunity for the city to get far more than it could have through the regular regulatory process. And the question you need to ask yourselves is when a development agreement comes to you is whether or not this is in fact the case. What we've been seeing coming out of OEWD, and especially for, which is surprising for projects this complex, is that OEWD is actually incorporating waivers of things that we have on the books to ensure that prevailing wages are applied to this project throughout, that local hire and apprenticeship are requirements as part of the land swaps and the public trust land swaps that are happening, as well as as well as with the public financing that is underwriting the infrastructure program. What the Board of Supervisors really needs to consider is establishing minimum standards for these development agreements so that we don't have situations like this where people come in at on the day of the hearing, basically maybe they've had a chance to see the DA for a month or so, and everyone tries to open these things up. And it's untenable for members of the public. It certainly creates a whole range of uncertainty for the developers themselves, and it doesn't put OEWD in a good light because it doesn't strengthen their position to actually get the most that the public deserves on this. So as you do your due diligence.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, please.
Good afternoon, supervisors. My name is Michael Hammond. I'm a long-term resident of India Basin, and I'm here to speak in favor of this project. The salient point that you need to keep in mind is that this development is the result of a 4-year collaboration with the community, many, many meetings, and during the course of that evolution of this project, it ended up preserving the...
Sorry about that. We will stop your time. Hold on. 1 second. I think we need to rewind like 10 seconds or so. Okay, great. Sorry about that. Go ahead, please.
Okay. We ended up preserving the valuable essence of the wild India Basin that we all love, and in return, we're getting 3,500 units of housing. The essence of this project is to concentrate the development in a fewer number of larger buildings nestled up against the hillside. Not only does that create the 5-acre park that is a huge amenity for not just the city but for this region, but we also have more space between the buildings, preserving view corridors and creating an open, spacious sense that is unlike any other place in the Bay Area. Our neighborhood welcomes this development. We lust after the retail that will come along with it, and we certainly welcome the 3,500 new residents into our community. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Again,
and Mr. Wright, I apologize, but because you already spoke, we're not allowed to get you more time to speak on this particular item. We have notes in the minutes that you've spoken on this item already. We are on items 9 through 11, which we call together, so I apologize, but we're not going to be able to allow you to speak again. We do call certain items as a package because it's about the same project, so they're just different elements of the same project. So unfortunately, we're not going to be able to let you speak again. So I apologize, sir. I'm going to have to ask you to sit down. No, this is the rule for every single person who comes up to speak. No, we don't. So, all right, sir. I'm going to have to ask you to sit down, and the deputy sheriff can ask you to sit down, please. No, this is the rule for everyone, so please, sir. All right, so anyone else who hasn't spoken yet on items 9 through 11, please come on up. And if not, I'm going to close public comment. Okay, public comment is closed. All right, so I know that there were a number of questions earlier around the affordable housing on the project and so forth, and I'm just wondering if we can get some clarification from OWD on that. I think Mr. Rich had something to offer there. Oh, we'll need the mic on for Mr. Rich.
So I wanted to just try a second try at just explaining the way the affordable housing program works. That this is just for clarification. Obviously, it's in the board's purview to accept or reject this particular set of policies. But let's just start by looking at 1,575 units. The project is at 25%, so that's 394 units. Of those 394 units, at least 319 of those need to be on site. The developer may, of the 319 units, may build up to 180 of those units on up to 3 standalone sites working with an affordable developer. But, and this is very important, no city money will pay for those units. The developer will fund the gap other than freely available tax credits. So we've got 394, 20 is the whole 25%, 319 is the amount that the minimum on site of those. Anywhere between 0 and 180 can be on separate parcels. So what that leaves you is 75 units that can be taken care of by feeing out. So I don't know if I just made you more confused. I kind of, Supervisor Safai, if I did, let me try again. I just want to make sure we've got the right basis before we debate the merits of it. But
right, but through the chair, you said 3 separate parcels?
So,
3 separate parcels on the site?
Correct.
Right, okay.
So in other words, they can supply their 319 units either fully through inclusionary, scattering them in all the buildings, or they can set aside 3 parcels within the site and make those 100% affordable. Either way, in the site, there will be 319 units.
Okay. Yeah.
Through the chair.
Oh,
Hope I didn't make it worse.
Through the chair. So, and at the average AMI range that was referenced.
Subject to the average AMI range that was referenced, we expect that if they do go the route, which we expect them to, but there is pointed out correctly, no obligation, that they will take advantage of the 3 sites, bring in the tax credits, and do those as low income because it makes more financial sense. Again, what I wanted to reiterate is if we were to get more onerous here, either with lower AMIs or less on site, or higher fee outs or whatever, I think the overall percentage would need to come down. We are really on the edge of what can be afforded by this project. I wish we could have asked them for more than this. We asked for as much as we thought we could get and still have a good chance of getting the project built. I'm honestly worried that this project will get built even at this requirement.
And I apologize if I missed this earlier, but for the 0 through 180 potential units that could be built in partnership with a 100% affordable housing developer partner, if you don't build any of those, then you would just pay the city the fee.
No, if you don't build those, you have to build 319 units on the site. You can do up to 180 of that 319 on those parcels, but if that doesn't happen or they can't find a partner or whatever, they have to do all 319 on the site through inclusionary. The only units that can be feed out of this site are the 75 to go from 319 to 394.
Great, thank you very much for that clarification.
And while I'm up here, I did want to clarify also, we're not aware of any waivers of local hire or prevailing wage. The advice that we have from the city attorney, and please correct me if I'm wrong, is that the horizontal on a project like this must be prevailing wage, and it is required to in the DA. And the areas that they're building on that are in city ownership, so a couple of the existing street rights of way, as well as the portion of the park that's going to be deeded to the city, will be prevailing wage plus local hire. The parts of the horizontal that are not going into public ownership will be just prevailing wage. The vertical is not and never has been in a DA on private land required to go prevailing wage.
Thank you. And I know earlier there was some expression of concern that all of the affordable housing requirements weren't memorialized in the document. Just pointing out it is in Exhibit H, which is, I guess, starting on page 164 of the PDF of the DA that is in our Legistar.
It's a big document.
Yes. Okay. So with that said, sorry, Supervisor Kim.
By the way, thank you for clarifying all the prevailing wage agreements. On the housing, I wasn't confused at all about what is in this deal. What I merely brought up is that when we allow developers to fee out or offsite, it's a higher percentage. So I understand that the parameters of this project are different. You know, all these development projects are apples to oranges. I'm just pushing back, as I always do, on the affordability. And it's always hard to hear projects won't pencil out, because I'm always told that projects won't pencil out at 10%, at 12%, at 15%. So it's really hard for me to evaluate, you know, what is true and not. And also what is frustrating for me, as someone who's been a supervisor both during the recession and now in the boom period, is that during the recession, developers asked to reduce their affordability because the financing has dried up. And then in the boom, we're asked to reduce their affordability because construction costs have gone up. And it seems like either in the boom or in the recession that, you know, affordable housing, and by the way, it's not affordable housing, it's our working class and middle class families lose out.
Nobody is more frustrated than me that we started in at 33% on this project, and when we ran the numbers, we looked at them just internally, not with the developer, and we said, oh my God, we can't ask for that. The project isn't going to pencil. And construction costs, you know, I never remember these numbers, but they go up something like 8 or 10% a year. They're much higher than when you saw probably the last big DA you saw, when you saw the Mission Rock. I mean, they're probably up 10 or 20% from that point. It is incredibly frustrating that we can't get that under control, but that's what's driving this problem.
On the, so I did find the exhibits. I just want to thank Charles Sullivan for, I didn't get to the exhibit portion. I just read the initial portion, so I see where everything is put together. You did mention that the developer may do 100% affordable on the 3 sites, and because a tax credit makes sense for them to build at the lower AMI. But do they have to build an average 120%? Because as Fernando Marti had brought up, if you have one parcel at 55% of average median income, those are, you know, tax credit eligible. It would mean that, you know, the rest of the units would be way, way, way above what we've ever considered affordable housing for rentals.
I think that's correct, with one important proviso, and I'm going to ask the staff to correct me. I believe the math you're doing is correct, but you are prevented by the ultimate cap, no matter what the average in the DA is. They can't do anything that rents for more than 80% of the prevailing market rents in the neighborhood. I don't know if it's defined as District 10. So whatever the prevailing market rent in District 10 is, there can be no units on this parcel that are renting for more than 80% of that number.
And
so that takes into account
currently?
all the units in District 10.
What is that number currently?
You know, I don't think we know it. I'm not sure if
I
Dan,
mean, that's a very scary number for us to go by, because we're not actually looking at what people make in the neighborhood, which I think there was some confusion in the back and forth with President Cohen. It seemed like we were talking about the average AMI in the district.
Yeah.
Now you're telling me it's the average market rate of rent, which is based on what landlords are charging for rent. That's not.
No. It's the average rent. That includes all the rent-controlled rents and all the. Is that? Or am I getting this right?
That's still a very scary number, because that's not based on the need. That's based on what units are going for on the market, which are very high and unaffordable for our residents. Am I misunderstanding?
Let me clarify, though. I apologize. There's an important distinction. Let me just read the document.
And didn't I hear someone
for
say,
market rate
though,
units?
I think
no, it is for market rate units. You're right, Supervisor. So it's got to be 80%, no more than 80% of the average market rate
So
rent.
with 2 bedrooms going for $4,500, that is a very scary number.
Well, again, that would be far above the capped 140 AMI. 140 AMI would rent for.
So there's
Dan,
a cap
do you
of-
have
Because I heard,
numbers on that?
Sorry if I might jump in. I thought I heard Ms. Topier say earlier that all the units still would have to fall 20% below the market rate of the area.
So whichever is lower,
whichever is lower,
140% of AMI or 80% of the average market rate unit, whichever is lower.
So 140 is still.
140 is an absolute cap.
Okay.
I think it was 150 for ownership.
Okay. All right.
Stay up here.
It appears we're going to have some time for at least you to walk me through all of this throughout the week. So I look forward to continuing that discussion.
Ms. Topia, did you want to add something, or?
I just wanted to, so in the development agreement, in the affordable housing, or in page 2 of the Exhibit H, under the definition, it does say an affordable housing cost will not exceed an amount that is 20% below the average rental charge or sales price for market rate units within Supervisory District 10. The methodology for determining affordable housing costs shall be as set forth in the MOCD manual. So, I think that, which is updated from time to time. So that's where the definition is. So I just wanted to clarify that.
Thank you, Ms. Topier.
I apologize that we need to clarify, but this is an important point. We think that the 80% is the average of all units in District 10, which would include rent-controlled units and market rate units, but we will clarify that because I didn't want to...
And it doesn't include public housing.
It doesn't include BMRs or public housing, but it would include just regular units that are not under some kind of deed restriction. So that would be everything from new market rate units, which are at those high prices that you mentioned, to the average rent-controlled unit, which is, all over the place.
Do we know what that currently is in District 10?
So the requirement in the DA is that a market study be done at the time. Let us figure out how we can get that number sooner than that.
It would just be helpful as a point of context or to contextualize what that number means, what it is today.
Okay. All right. Thank you for that. Supervisor Safai.
Thank you. Thank you for all the great questions and conversation. I wanted to make a motion to approve the amendment. Did Supervisor Cohen read into the record the amendment that if we could make that on parking ratios as it pertains to grocery stores?
Okay. All right. So there's been a proposal to make that amendment, and we can do that without objection. Okay.
Great. And also, just for the record, Supervisor Cohen, before she left, thinks that there's still a little bit of dialogue that needs to happen. She would like this item continued for 1 week. She wants all parties to continue the conversation. I think it gives a little more time for there to be a letter of intent finalized. It also gives a little more time to have some clarity around the AMI ratios, along with some of the specificity on where the land would be designated. I understand that there's very little room for, as Office of Economic and Workforce Development said, there's very little room for negotiation. I don't think this is really about negotiation as it more is the clarity for all parties and all people intended, and it gives a little more time for the overall negotiation. I think this is generally a phenomenal plan. One more thing I've asked the developer to do is to have more of a written agreement with those that I think are the most impacted, the immediate neighbors living in public housing, so that there's a formalized written language talking about availability and opportunity for jobs as well as housing. We discussed that in the meeting. I think that those that are immediately across the street and living in public housing should have that opportunity. And I think there were some good intentions made from when we met and talked with the developer, but having it in writing, as Supervisor Kim said, is always that much more reassuring to the community. So given those things, I'd make a motion to continue this item for 1 week.
Okay, so there's been a motion to continue for 1 week and items 9 through 11, so we'll do that without objection then. All right. Madam Clerk, are there any other items before us today?
For clarity, continued as amended?
Yes, continue as amended. I apologize.
There's no further business.
Thank you. This meeting is adjourned.